Call the meeting to order for the Finance Committee Wednesday. Okay. Mike's. Call the meeting to order for Wednesday, August 25th of the Finance Committee. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Ms. Weber? Present. Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Parker? Mr. Kinzinger?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Dunnell?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
We need a vote in terms of Mr. Long attending by Zoom. Is there a motion to approve?
Polk.
Mr. Featherlings, Polk seconds. Mr. Long, do you want to say anything?
Just I'm down here in Rantoul today for the Half Century of Progress show, which I'm part of the administration of the show, and thank you for allowing me in.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Just a minute.
I would just like to call out, it does fit in with our work-related stipulation within our county code. So I just want to make sure it's noted for the record.
Okay. Let's do that vote again then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Point of personal privilege, if I might. I attended yesterday by Zoom because I had a family member who'd been at a outside meeting where one of the participants ended up with COVID. That family member tested yesterday negative. So everything's good in our household. No one ever had any symptoms in the household. I don't have any requests for public comment. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? If not, we'll move to approval of the minutes. July 28 is Mr. Hunter, Mr. Swanson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Presentation. We move to the Economic Alliance has a presentation on Back to Business Grant Program. Mr. Nugent, you can either sit here if you're more comfortable or stand. Feel free, whatever you think the mic will work best.
You said to sit here because the microphone's not working over there.
All right, that's good. We want the mic to work.
All right.
I'll even turn it off.
Got this one on? All right. I just want to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about a new grant that's recently come out. It's the Back to Business Grant. We've got a little presentation on the screen. It's $250 million in COVID relief to Illinois' hardest hit employers. The next slide is it's part of Governor Pritzker's $1.5 billion economic recovery plan. Again, this is $250 million throughout the whole state. So it sounds like a lot of money, but when you think about, throughout the whole state of Illinois, that's really, it's not a ton of money, but it's still $250 million, and it's supposed to be targeting small businesses and businesses that have not had the ability to be able to be part of any of the other grants. It's the part of the money that the state of Illinois has gotten from the American Recovery Plan Act, the Arpa Fund. So what the state is doing is taking money that they've gotten from the federal government and passing it through and trying to distribute it to some of the hardest hit businesses throughout the state of Illinois. The next slide shows it's got targeted outreach with a focus on underserved businesses, including minority, rural, veteran, and women-owned businesses. The $250 million is going to be awarded in 5,000 to 150,000 grant increments. So the smallest grant award will be 5,000. The largest is 150,000. And I'll show you the formula as to how they determine that. There's $100 million that is going to be allocated to businesses in what they say is considered disproportionately impacted areas, or DIAs. The state has given us a map, and that'll be on the screen later, but Kankakee, Bradley, Pembroke Township, and Aroma Park are pretty much all considered a disproportionately impacted areas. So if you have businesses or you know of businesses in these areas that might qualify for this grant, please let them know about it. They can, we'll forward this presentation to you. They can also call our office. But any businesses in that area, and even if you're not in that area, you still qualify. It's just they have a checklist, and you get preference points depending on where you're located. So they encourage us not, to have people in these areas apply. But if you're outside the area, that doesn't disqualify you. You just might be put down a little farther in the ladder. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nugent, your office will provide technical assistance as well?
Right. We will walk the people through. I've got to give credit to the state on this grant. Historically, the state, when they've issued grants, they come out with 30, 35-page applications, and people get to page 2, and they've got so much information that they're asking that they just kind of throw up their hands and say, hey, it's not worth it, or I can't do it. This one is really simple. It's about a 4-page application online. They ask some pretty basic questions, which I'll get through here. If you have that information in front of you, and you've got you can do it on your computer. It has to be done on the computer. You can actually complete this grant in about 20-25 minutes. It's very simple, and I'm going to tell you as we go through what information the people have to have. There's $30 million that's being allocated to the arts and entertainment businesses, $25 million on restaurants and taverns, and they're targeting restaurants and taverns that have not gotten any other grants earlier in the COVID crisis. $25 million for hotels. Again, a lot of hotels are out there didn't qualify for some of the other grants, and then $25 million for any business that has not received a big grant. Some of the criteria, so you can tell your businesses that you're aware, that you know of, they had to be operating in 2019, and they must have filed a tax return in 2019, and they have to have their 2019 business tax return, and they have to have their 2020 business tax return. So they have to have those, on a flash drive or on their computer somewhere where they can upload them on this application grant. The next criteria is they have to have revenues of less than $20 million. Well, in Kankakee County, I mean, that's not, most businesses are not that big that have revenues or income of $20 million. So, I mean, if you're dealing with a company that's got a $25 million revenue, they don't qualify. But like I say, majority of our businesses in the area are less than $20 million. And there's priority for small businesses that have revenues of less than $5 million. And the other criteria is they had to make less money in 2020 versus what they made in 2019. So what you look on your business tax return, and item number 1C, you have to file your gross or your return, your revenues for the year. If that number in 2019 was higher than it is in 2020, then obviously 2020 was not as good of a year. So you have to make less money in 2020 than you did in 2019. But that's obviously when COVID was hitting, and that's this is what they're trying to make up for. The hard-hit areas that have experienced prolonged hardship: hotels, restaurants, arts and entertainment, childcare, home health care, salons, fitnesses, museums. All of these that file, that they've made less money, they are all given preference. So when they go through in this process and file, they're going to be, asked obviously what type of industry, where they're at, and if they're in these industries, they're going to get preference point. Again, it doesn't eliminate any other companies that are outside these industries. It just puts them a little bit farther down the list. And what's going to happen is the state's going to have this $250 million allocated. They're going to start awarding it to the companies that check the most boxes, that meet the most criteria. But if there's still money available, then they will continue down that list, and other companies may also be able to receive something. This is the map that shows what they consider a disproportionately impacted area. You can see that the majority of the city of Kankakee, the majority of the village of Bradley, a lot of portions outside the area of Kankakee and in the Roma Park area are included. The Hopkins Park, Pembroke Township area is predominantly all included. So any businesses in here, in this region, will get preference points, but again, doesn't mean other businesses outside this map are disqualified. Priority will also be given to companies that have not received any money from the Payroll Protection Program. This program is hopefully to assist some, people and some companies that didn't qualify for the PPP. Also, if you received Restaurant Revitalization Fund monies, it will count against you. If you're part of the Business Interruption Grant, it will count against you. Or if you received money from the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, it will count against you. Doesn't disqualify you, but it does make you not as a preferential applicant. Again, the hardest hit industries that experience prolonged hardship, part of a disproportionately affected area, businesses that haven't qualified, those are the ones that really should look at this grant. What do they need in order to apply? The first page of the application, you got to have the business owner. You have the business owner's tax ID number. You have to supply them two bank statements. One bank statement from between April and December of 2020 to show that you were in business and you had a bank account during the COVID crisis. And then you also need a current bank statement, your most recent bank statement, to show that you're still in business. The state does not want to fund companies that went out of business or that aren't operating anymore. So they want to see that you were in business during COVID and you're still in business. The numbers on the bank statement are not what they're looking at. What they're looking at are the dates that you were in business in 2020 and that you're still currently in business. Then you also have to provide them your 2019 and your 2020 business tax return, not your personal tax return, your business tax return. Whether you're a corporation, a LLC, a partnership, whatever you are, those are the those are the items that you have to submit. The next screen. How they determine what you're eligible for. This is just an example. If in 2019 your gross receipts were $700,000 and in 2020 your gross receipts were $100,000, obviously there's a $600,000 difference. What they do is they take that difference and divide it by 6. So in this instance, that individual, that company would be eligible for up to a $100,000 grant. If the number comes out to be $93,000, they raise it up to the next to the next 5. So if you're eligible for $42,000, it'll go to $45,000, or 51, it'll go to 55. But they expect that the majority of these grants are going to be small, that they're not that they're going to be in the $5 to $10 to $15, $20,000 range, and they're hoping that's what it is, because they're hoping the smaller the grant, the farther that this money is going to go, that they're going to be able to help more and more businesses. So like I say, relatively easy. It can be done in 25 to 30 minutes on the computer, as long as you have all the information. If anybody is, if you start the application and you find you don't have something, you can stop it, get the information, come back and go back into the website. So it's you don't disqualify yourself if you don't if you're in the middle of it and you can't do it. You do have to go on the Illinois DCEO website. The last page will show you. You can go to the application portal on the Kankakee Economic Alliance website. That'll take you. There's a button there to click. You can also then go to the Illinois.gov DCEO website. It's labeled Back to Business or B2B grant, and go through the process. You do have to create a page with your email address and a password. Once you file and get everything in there, you will get an email from the state saying that that they received it, that you were successful in the application, and that you are ranked in a certain category. There's 32 categories. You might be ranked, if you're 32 out of 32, that means you didn't meet a lot of the criteria and you're at the bottom of the list. If you're in category 10 out of 32, obviously you're farther up the ladder. They're going to be taking applications from now until October 13th. and hopefully the money is going to get dispensed, rapidly after that. They will start dispensing some money previous to that to companies that have the higher scores that meet all these criteria. So my recommendation to any of your businesses is to get on the website, as soon as possible, and get their application submitted, and then they can also go back onto that website and kind of see what their status is. If they were, approved and they're going to be hearing more, or if they were not approved after the 13th, they'll be able to keep track of where they stand. If anyone has any issues or has any problems, they can contact, the Economic Alliance. The Economic Alliance is what we call a community navigator. The state has given money to a number of different organizations throughout the state, and one of those organizations reached out to us, and we are, providing regional support for anybody that has any problems going through this process. If they don't know whether they qualify, they would just want to talk to somebody about it, have them call our office. Email our office is actually better because we're in and out a lot. But we will be happy to go through the process with them, tell them what they need to have. Actually, we've already gone through and worked some people through the application process, and as time permits, we'll be happy to go through and do that. The Economic Alliance is what we call a community navigator. We're working as a spoke for this Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation and other organizations throughout the south suburbs. So if anyone has companies, they can go to the DCEO website, they go to our website. If they have questions, contact us and we'll be happy to take them through. I've had a couple of people call already saying, well, is it worth my time? Well, you got the opportunity on the lowest end to make $5,000 and it takes 25 minutes. Yeah, I'm thinking that, if your hourly rate is more than $10,000 an hour, then I guess you don't need to do it.
Mr. Swanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nugent, this is the way I read it. It's an individual business owner doing this work, right?
It can be.
What I'm referring to is like the PPP. If you weren't aligned with the bank, there were a lot of businesses that were aligned with credit unions that couldn't actually get into that program.
No, you can do this from your house. You do not have to, the bank does not have to do this with you like they did in the PPP.
Okay.
But as long as you have to provide them with the information that they're asked for. We did have some questions too. Let's say I'm a LLC or I'm a corporation. The first page of the application says business owner's name. Well, on a corporation or or LLC, the owner is multiple people. Well, what they're looking for is the person who's filling out that application, the secretary of the organization, the president of the organization, whoever it is. And they're going to want that person's name, that person's social security number, that person's address. But then farther down into the application, they ask for the corporation name or the LLC name and the address for the business where they operate on. And they ask for the FEIN number for that corporation. So if that company qualifies for the money and they get it, the W-9 tax return will be for the business, for the corporation, not for the individual who's filling it out.
Perfect.
But again, we had that question the first day, is that, hey, I'm not the owner, I'm the secretary of the organization, am I the one to fill it out? Yeah, any officer of the corporation can fill it out. And you will have to provide that social security number, but you won't be the one that's going to be taxed on this benefit. These will be taxable too, because this is going to, this is supplementing profit that you lost back in 2020. So, next year in January, the company will get a they're asking for a W-9. You will get a tax form, and have to pay taxes on whatever the amount is that you're getting.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there other questions?
We have some flyers in the back.
I have a question.
Anybody that's interested, like I say, have them contact our office. Again, the email is a lot easier than phone calls because, people call and we're on the other line, and, the email we will get back to you and we'll help people out as much as we can. Actually, we are keeping track of all the companies that, that we help, because we have to file reports too with our, as being a community navigator as to which organizations that we helped out.
Other questions on Zoom?
John?
Yes, I have a question. If I have a business, is that a conflict of interest if I apply?
No, the fact that you're an elected official it's not a conflict of interest. It's the business that they look at, not the individual. If you are a legitimate business that filed 2019 and 2020 tax returns,
Yes.
and you qualify, your status in the community as elected official should have no impact.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Feathering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My district encompasses some of the village of Manteno. Is there a line where the village is doing something and the county isn't, or how is that working out?
No, the Economic Alliance is the community navigator for the entire county. Now, the city of Moments, also the Main Street Moments, is doing some work with their organizations there, but we have reached out to all the local, or to the Kankakee County Chamber and the Manteno Chamber, and they are pushing this out to all their businesses too, and we're telling them the same story, but but we're the organization that's helping people throughout the whole county.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Mr. Hunter? Yeah, just real quick, Tim, have you talked with Gloria Kennedy with the Black Chamber? Okay.
Right, actually, they had a gentleman from Illinois DCEO yesterday here talking to the Black Chamber.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
and she's got all our information. She's been, actually, we've talked to her on the phone about stuff.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that that's not a whole lot of money, considering, $250,000 for hotels and things like that. Is the impetus time? People need to get on this right now because it could be gone. I asked that because I was trying to help people with the restaurant opportunities that came along in the past, 3-4 months. And by the time we went to apply, it was all gone. And are we in that danger as well, that they need to get on it now?
Right, I think, especially if you meet a lot of the criteria. I think if you're gonna, if you end up being, in category 32 out of 32, the likelihood of getting funded is probably going to be pretty remote anyway. But if you are in one of the disproportionate areas, you did not get any of the other funding, you did not receive any of the PPP, you haven't gotten anything, and you were impacted, I think those are the areas that they're going to look at. I know those are the areas they're going to look at first. And as soon as, if they get rid of all the money in those categories, there's some people that are going to miss out. So I would say yes, the sooner the better. It doesn't, it doesn't hurt to get it done now.
Other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we move on to the Finance Department, Mr. McCarty. You have the reports in your packet. We're going to try and move along on this pretty quickly, so as soon as he gets up here, I'm going to let him move this as quickly as he can through and to answer any questions you have.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just real quick, sales tax continues to impress, if you will. So we'll continue to watch that. Provided all the regular information. So unless there's something that jumps out for questions, we look at this every month, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. So we did have a few that went down, but overall, the overall trend for the year is positive as we go through. So we'll spend a lot of time unless there's any questions on that, because I know you got a lot to cover today.
Go ahead then.
Okay, and then the cash flow update. Not a lot to talk about because of the property tax distribution in July. There was, for the funds that are included in this cash flow report, $10.4 million was distributed for tax, for the property tax distribution. So no complaints at this point. Got the information as far as estimates flowing through the rest of the fiscal year. So I don't know if there's any specific questions. One unique thing, because this is cash flow, the inmate bed rental and the inflows, that can go up and down because depending on the timing, if it crosses a calendar month, that might throw off. 1 month might be lower, 1 month might be higher. But that doesn't, the actual activity, average we have, you have in the other reports. So just realize that this is more of a cash when the timing of when it hits and what month it hits in. So
If there are no questions, we'll move right along.
All right, I have no claims today for discussion.
All right.
And then the monthly claims.
The monthly claims are in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Swanson? Mr. Payton seconds. Any questions on the monthly claims? Discussion. Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote on the monthly claims, please. Motion to approve.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Mr. Payton? Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Dennell? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
All right, we're going to move to the American Rescue Plan request, and Mr. Wheeler, I'm going to let you speak to that.
Let's, we're gonna wait till we get to the bottom of the agenda on that.
All right,
Yeah,
so
that's all
if,
part of the same thing.
if that's okay, we'll hold on those. Are we holding all three of those items in?
Well, Steve was gonna
the
talk
request
about the
that-
copier and the audit.
Okay,
Yeah,
the copier.
Do you want me to discuss the details now or wait till you cover that?
You could just
maybe?
mention what you're doing and then
Okay.
we'll cover it later. Maybe.
We put a request in to the state's attorney's office. For those on Zoom, I passed out what we're having reviewed. It's a purchasing program that the Canon copiers and all purchasing goes through a bid program. So we believe that they're already bid out, and we've checked in and we're eligible to participate in this program. So we're double checking with the state's attorney's office to make sure that it covers the bid process that we have, that we are under. And then Proven IT has told us that if we purchase through this program, through them, they would be the dealer, but we would get the pricing as the county, but we have to go through a dealer to get it, that they would connect any new machines to our current maintenance program, which they were the lowest responsible bidder back in 2018. So,
Okay, so what's your pleasure? Let's expedite this.
well, we're not to a point of being able to vote on it yet. So this is information right now because we have.
Why'd you get, okay.
It's for information. So what we're doing. So if it comes to the point, then we'll bring it back.
Yeah, because I thought we had discussed this stuff before. Okay.
It was on there. We were hoping we'd be able to move, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So we put it on there just in case. You know, everybody's busy, so we weren't sure of the timing. So anyway, you know, the current units are aged. We have some that I believe are still struggling along back from 2001, some 2004. Some of these units, and we're under an ongoing agreement with Xerox and what used to be Martin Whalen, which we're paying more for that maintenance because they're older units, and we just didn't have the money to replace other than the ones that just died. So with underneath this program of lost revenue, we believe infrastructure improvements, you know, so we're looking at upgrading all the older units to new units and then saving money on an annual basis because the maintenance contract is at a lower rate. So all good stuff. We're just not to the point of being able to actually move yet. So I just wanted to give you an update of where we're at and what we're doing.
What do you need?
This is just FYI right now, so just letting you know what we're doing, what we found, and what we're working on.
Mr. Feathering.
Steve, when we go to this iPad, thing, are we gonna be using copiers as much when technology changes here in the next 10 years? Are we gonna shoot everything out there?
I mean, we've seen lower volumes, but it doesn't go down to zero, you know, especially the operational aspects within each department, you know, but over the years, we've seen the amount of volume, you know, come down some because of people scanning and emailing and that sort of thing. So.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you had an idea how much it would go down. We really don't know, I guess.
My estimate is $8,000 to $10,000 savings a year.
Okay.
Roughly.
That's a good savings.
I don't want to be redundant, Mr. Chairman, but Steve, you're giving us all the reasons why we should go with this program, savings, et cetera. heretofore, we talked about going ahead and getting new printers, equipment, and so forth. And I'm not understanding, not that I'm, a spender, but you've justified why we need to move on it.
Well, it's if we need to do a bid process or not, or if this qualifies that we can purchase under it. So that's where we're not sure yet which direction we need to go in order to accomplish the purchase.
So you're saying yes, but the process is in question?
Yes, how to do this, yes.
Okay.
That's what we're having reviewed right now through the state's attorney's office.
All right.
Oh, it is, yeah.
We move. The annual audit, we have not bid out the audit for a couple of years.
Right. There was some interest. Chairman Wheeler asked us to develop a request for qualification for the annual audit. So what you have document in front of you would cover the fiscal years ending November 30th, 2021, 22, and 23, with an option for 24 and 25. So 3 years with an option to go out to 5 years. So it's 15 pages. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but this would basically, the date timeline would, if it's approved today, then the proposals would be back in time for next month's finance committee. The time
Mr. Hunter moves to approve a request for qualifications for the annual audit. Mr. Kinzinger seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Mr. Payton? Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Dennell? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Okay, is there anything else from your department?
Just real quick, I put this in this presentation when this ARPA information started, and just remind you of what keeps me up at night, and that is the general fund budget and how tight it is, not only now but into the future. And just a reminder that as we go through ARPA, especially for internal things, to please keep an eye out and process and analyze any ongoing expense that will hit the general fund beyond ARPA timeline. So please keep that in mind, because the general fund budget, even though we're working on that and getting to the point of presenting it, there's a lot of information we're still gathering. Please keep that in mind for ongoing general fund flow and beyond ARPA funds, please. That's all I had.
All right, thank you very much then. We'll move to the Treasurer's office. You have the reports from Mr. Africano. Could we have a motion to combine and approve those reports?
Polk.
Ms. Polk, motion to combine and approve. Is there a second? Mr. Donnell. Any questions, comments on motion to combine and approve? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The Sheriff's Department, the monthly update is in there. Sheriff, you want to come up?
Yeah, real quick.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Just a couple things that, some we kind of go without saying because of what's going on nationally, but our revenue from out of county is down, which is not a surprise. We reported that every month. We have leveled off a little bit. I would like to give a shout out to Ms. Hudson and Mr. Kirkstra, who actually came out a couple weeks ago for a rather lengthy tour of our jail and some of the department. We sat in the conference room and had good conversation for about a couple hours, and it was a very good tour, and thank them both for taking the time to come out and that invitation is always open for anybody who wants to come. So appreciate you guys coming out. COVID with the, what do they call it now? The
Delta.
deviant, the whatever it is, the Delta variant, the deviant, whatever the heck it is. We have been fairly fortunate throughout the jail. We have had a very small bout with it. Actually, we've had a bigger bout with our staff than we have the inmates and detainees. So at the present time, we have 0 of our inmates and detainees in custody who have any form of COVID, whether it's the regular COVID or the variant or whatever. One thing to keep in mind, and we talk about things going on and how what's happened over the last couple of years, and I know I talked about domestic batteries at length. We have started that process of moving those who are in custody for domestic battery into their own housing unit. We've also started to move those with opioid issues into their own housing unit so that we can deal with them specifically, and hope that, obviously the goal is that they don't come back to our jail. We do have an organization that will come in and provide training for those abusers, and we do have an organization that will come in and do some opioid treatment as well. However, on another topic, and I'm sure that you're aware of the number of homicides that are occurring in our county. Yesterday marked the 12th homicide in Kankakee County in 2021, and we've still got 3 months to go in the fiscal year, 4 months to go in the calendar year. That is significant. And when you compare that to last year, we had 9. The year before that, in 2019, we had 5. The year before that, we had 6, and the year before that, we had 7. So that number this year has basically doubled back from 2018, and that's certainly concerning for our department, for the safety of our community. So obviously, we are looking to, try and deal with some things. Jim Rowe and myself have put together a meeting monthly with local detectives. And so we do meet every fourth Thursday. We're meeting tomorrow. And because a lot of the players are all related, so it's good that we have, we're lucky in this county that we have police agencies that all work together. So just to keep you apprised, I can tell you that within the county, we've had 2 in the county this year. Of those 12, 2 of them were in county's jurisdiction. Last year we had 1 in our county, in the county's jurisdiction. The year before that we had 1. The year before that we had 2, and in 2017 we also had 1. So we're still battling that. So, and that's the rest are other municipalities. I didn't break it down by each municipality. Like I said, the one yesterday was in Moments. So that's all I got.
Are there any questions for the sheriff, Mr. Feathering?
Yeah. Mike, you've been around a while. What are you
trying to say?
No.
What's that mean?
Nothing like that. I mean, you've been around a while.
I hear you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you've seen it all. Okay.
Well, I haven't seen it all.
What do you attribute this to? What do you, besides, you really believe it's all related to the COVID lockdown?
Well, and with all due respect, Mr. Featherling, I don't know that we have enough time in this meeting, because I know there's a lot of things going on today.
Okay.
But I would be more than happy to answer that at the criminal justice meeting, just because of time today. Okay. Like I said, I'd talk for another hour about it, but I just think we need to move on with the matter at hand. But there's a lot of things that contribute to it, and some of them people aren't going to want to hear. But okay. Thank you for the question, though. It's a great question.
All right.
Anything else? If not, thank you. We move to the Arpa funds, and let me turn the chair over to Chairman Andy Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks for everybody's future time that you'll be dedicating here to this process, and everybody sitting in the back. who are decomposing as we speak, because this is going to be a haul, but I'll try to keep things moving. I've tried to come up with a system to vet every specific request that we have in this area in a expedited fashion, give you a chance to answer any questions the board members may have, and then to move things forward in a manner that satisfies the requirements placed upon us by the Department of Treasury. So
we're starting back here on the ARPA Fund.
we're starting on the ARPA Fund. That's the first one we're starting with. Now, I'm calling this the ARPA Fund. This is the one that is dedicated, and we have to call out a specific COVID reason for these projects. So these, when we submit our backup to the U.S. Department of Treasury, we're going to have to note exactly which part of the allowed uses via our final resolutions to provide in the packet to the federal government. So we want to make sure this is buttoned up and tight as it needs to be, even to the point of obsession, because we want to make sure none of this comes back on us to repay. So when we make these choices, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second, but we will then send it to finance for them to go through and make sure that our assertions are correct with the reasons that the Department of Treasury provides them as our grant monitor, if you will, within the county. So there'll be another check and balance before it gets to the full board to make sure that the right allocation is from the right fund, which is hugely important in this. So this first ARPA fund that we're going to start going through is very restrictive. There's 7 sections here in front of me. It was part of the application. The applicants had to call out which section it applied to. If they didn't, we're going to make some assumptions here in the room, some not educated guesses based on the nature of the request, assign a number to it. We'll go through this sheet for the ARPA fund. We'll either approve or deny via voice vote. Then we'll go back and have a roll call vote on what we just did to send that to the full board and start moving on some of these bids, if you will. Now, there will be a couple of different things that we can do. For one of the first things is we can approve it because it met all the standards, and that is, we think this is something we want to do. Part of that is we already know the number, so it can just go forward and we could purchase things if it's internal or move whatever the external use may be. There also may be a bid process, so your vote will allow us to go through the bid process and then place it on our future allocations list. So we may need specific documentation on the price of something. There was an estimate included in the request, and we say, yeah, we believe in this, but we need the actual price, and then we'll rank that future projects and then come back in here and start releasing those as the time comes in. So you're going to be making the decision here and then recommending that to the full board that that's what that list is, and it'll evolve and change because the situation may change. We're trying to build a little flexibility into this because we don't know where this pandemic is going. Is it going to come back? Are we going to have to spend more money on local businesses? Those types of things. So we've got budgeting constraints, also the ability to budget, and then adherence to the U.S. Department of Treasury regulations, and then wanting to do the most good that we can per our policies that we've already passed. So I hope that makes sense the way I explain that. I'm just here to facilitate. If I notice something that's going sideways, I'll mention it, but obviously you all make the decisions in the final end of things. So one of the first things that we have to do, though, is we have to decide, because we mentioned it in the committee of the whole, are we going to have capped funds so we can budget? I highly recommend it, or else this could be like riding the buck and bronco for the next 3 years. We have to be able to predict what we have in there, and that doesn't mean that we can't open it back up later if we run out of funds, okay? So this very first item is for our businesses and non-for-profits, and when I say non-for-profit, I'm talking about places like the Humane Foundation, which has a request, not Aunt Martha's. Not social service related ones, because that's all going into the separate process that we're going to begin that we talked about with the RFQ to be able to get our arms around all the social service stuff. We'll be working with the probation and the Sheriff's Department and KCRO and all these different organizations to put together what we want to do on the social service side of it. This is just for the businesses and non-for-profits that don't fall into that bucket. Private for-profit, and then the non-for-profits that are not necessarily related to social services. So the question is if we are going to go this route, are we going to have a capped fund, and what amount? So I guess the first, and kind of open it up to discussion. I would throw out there that I think $250,000 is a good place to start for businesses and non-for-profits. And maybe have the same thing for the non-covered governmental units. We'll get into that in a second. And then from that, we establish what types of individual caps we may have and what stipulations we have on that. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, please discuss it now. Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Swanson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. On the non-for-profits, money received from the Arpa Fund, do we have any way to verify that the money we give is used for the use requested? I mean, that's not FOIAble, right?
Well, if they put in a request, it's all FOIAble. So somebody could FOIA any of these requests as it stands right now.
Is there a verification for all the money that it was used for the intent asked?
And Steve, I need you to chime in on this because there is the stipulation, and I will, where's it at here? Sorry, I've got all these papers in front of me. Section 2.9, which says small business and economic assistance. That's just general. As far as I know, and as far as we've talked about, that doesn't require the backup that they spend it on anything COVID related. Okay, the law allows us just to grant this to those businesses. Steve, are you giving me the head nod? You same?
Yeah. Look, Kevin was telling me how to use the mic, so I don't screw it up for everybody else. So that's right.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you pick up the mic?
Yeah. I'll do like this. Yeah, I agree. The application that we developed, we requested information that we'll have to report on. So that's how we developed and backed into the application that we have, and then the categories. And so we'll also have to request additional information when it comes, depending on if it's ARPA or lost revenue. There's a lot of different stipulations when it comes to reporting what we'll need as backup.
So there's more to come, like maybe sign-offs, that's saying that the information they provided was accurate and all of that kind of stuff. But to that point, what we're doing with these non-for-profits and for-profits is they're telling us what they're going to do with it, and then we're just trusting that they're going to do that with it. They qualified. We could put more stipulations on it. I don't know that that's necessary, but it depends on how big of a cap that you're going to institute. If you are going to have each applicant can have a cap of X amount of dollars from the county, keeping in mind that they can apply with the cities as well that they're in. So that's the second thing that we're going to have to take a look at as well. So please.
If there is okay, Mr. Piston.
I think Mr. Swanson asked a very good, legitimate question, and perhaps it should be related to the cap that we put on these funds. In other words, $50,000 and we trust you $250,000 and we have to check the accountability, something of that nature. The county's had experience with passing out money and things not being done the way they said they were going to be done. So I think that we need to give Mr. Swanson's question serious consideration. How are we going to inspect what we expect?
To move this along, could we have a motion to approve the concept of cap funds and a recommended amount? Someone want just to open the discussion here, a motion to approve the concept of capped, total cap to go into each of these funds and an amount for that capped. Is there someone prepared to make a motion on that, or do you need further explanation? See, now we're not getting a motion. I think we're going to need further explanation. Well, someone seems. What questions do you have? What do you need to know before a motion is made? Mr. Feathern?
How can you establish a cap? How can you have to qualify each category, right?
As I understand what is being proposed here is there's two different kinds of caps that we're going to be talking about. Okay. We're going to talk about the fact that we've got this large sum of money, $21.3 million over 2 years. And within that, we're pulling out part of that money and saying that in this category involving business and the NFP fund, we're going to say at this point in time, we're not going to spend more than X number of dollars. If you like that concept, then the chair would entertain a motion to do that, and then ask that there be within that motion a specific amount for the amount we're going to start with in this portion of the money that is available from the federal government. Now,
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
yes,
The second part of that would be is to discuss, is there going to be an individual cap per applicant? So the first is the total amount so we can budget for the businesses and not-for-profits, and then separately, the capped non-covered governmental units like fire protection and park districts that didn't get any money on the other side of it. So,
Mr. Wheeler, just to make it easy to follow through, maybe we could have two separate motions, one on the total and one on the capped.
Mr. Chair?
the total for which, I'm sorry, for which one?
The total in your cap business NFP fund, one motion on that.
Oh, yeah.
And then a separate motion on the individual caps.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion.
All right, so the motion is to approve a total cap at this time, and what amount are you going to recommend?
Well, Mr. Wheeler is really involved in these numbers, and he had mentioned 250. Is that where you really, is that where you'd really feel comfortable that we'd be at?
That's where I recommend we start there, because we can alter it down the road.
Okay, if it gets blown out of the water, we can.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Fairfield seconds that. Now we're open for discussion. Is there anything you need to clarify on what that total cap is on the business NFP fund? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, just a question. And I had a discussion with the chairman about this, and I don't have a problem with that. We need to expedite this. And he did say also that that could be modified as well, too, in terms of...
That is the intention.
So, okay.
Mr. McCarty, did you have something more?
This might help clarify some of the concern. Per the federal regulations, if there's an award over 50,000, there's actual on-site monitoring required. If it's under 50,000, there's not. So there's paperwork. So 50,000 is the threshold that the Fed set as far as what the county's additional responsibility to monitor. So I don't know if that helps answer the questions that board members had.
So what you're saying then, Mr. McCarty, is that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have the obligation to provide on-site monitoring, or who does that?
The county's responsible for that.
Okay. And that brings up another question.
If it's over 50.
Yeah. 50. That brings up another question. You may recall I mentioned some time ago in terms of what additional personnel we're going to have to address this stuff, because this could be real interesting in terms of the allocations and the...
Well, if I might interrupt, Mr. Hunter, for these, when we get to individual caps, I think you're going to see a recommendation that will be less than 50,000. So on this portion of the expenditures,
okay,
that's not
that's fair
necessarily
statement.
an issue. We have a motion. Is there further discussion?
Call for the question.
There's a call for the question. I think we can do this by voice vote,
We're
can't
going to
we?
do voice votes and then one roll call for the whole sheet,
So
based on the individual recommendations of each project, to move things along.
a voice vote on the total amount, $250,000 for business non-FP fund. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now, an individual cap. For any one request from an organization, we need a recommendation on an amount. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason I'm going to throw out this number is really, there'll be two different numbers coming, one for each fund. It's based on their access to previous funds. If you saw what Mr. Nugent brought up, that the funds that currently are existing are after everything else has been applied for. And they're to catch the people who fell through the cracks, the lower amounts of money. So if you say it's $50,000, that may seem like not a lot of money if you were a business owner. But then if you only got $250 in the fund, it's gone quick. So I would recommend something lower, either 10 or 20,000, preferably 10. And I think that is a good way to go for our local businesses, because they should have already been eligible for and applied for other things on that. So that would be the cap on that fund. That's my suggestion.
Mr. Withers made a motion to approve the individual cap of 10,000.
Hunter.
Mr. Hunter, I'm sorry.
I agree.
Mr. Swanson, were you seconding that? Is there any discussion on the individual cap? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed, say no. Motion carries. A reference to municipal match, we should make comment on that.
Sure, we had talked about this also in the committee meetings. We're getting requests from businesses, individuals, governmental units that lie within and serve residents in other municipal areas. Coming to us, maybe because we're actually the ones who are moving forward on this, and that's not a slam on the cities or anything like that. They've got their own processes. We've just kind of moved it at a quicker pace. I personally think, and a lot of other board members have told me that they agree that the municipality should spend some of their ARPA money, not lost revenue, but ARPA money on their own municipalities. So my suggestion would be to us to have a municipal match requirement as a incentive for the municipalities to participate, because we both benefit on the tax revenue side of things. The services that we provide to the citizens are driven by the tax revenue coming out of those areas. So if the business or not-for-profit primarily is within municipality X, then we would say, okay, well, your request was $20,000, our cap is 10. So we're fine, we'll contribute the 10 and you can chase them down for your other 10. But if the request is 12.5, then the most we would contribute if they're in a municipality is $6,250. Does that make sense? Yep. Because then they would have to approach that municipality, and I don't mind helping with them approach that municipality. We need partners in this though. And I don't really think many municipalities would turn down their local businesses and not-for-profits. So that's just my own thoughts, and the committee can kind of talk about that.
A motion to approve that concept of municipal match. Mr. Kinzer, Mr. Miller seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Bones?
Thank you, Chairman. This would be then anything in the unincorporated area. If they requested 10,000, we would do that.
If it met your...
If they're outside of the municipality.
Correct, right.
So anything in the unincorporated areas that didn't get any other funds other than the county ARPA, or the county funds.
Well, we're not saying that they couldn't have got other funds. We're just trying to focus on the ones that haven't. So really, it's the decision still would lie with
They still could have got other funds, and we would still.
You would still have the opportunity to make that decision. It's not an automatic, because I wouldn't just. You still have to approve everything. Finance, full board.
Other discussion. Mr. Searoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would the order be the municipality approves it first, then it comes to us for the second part? Or do we approve it and then it goes to the municipality? And what if they don't approve it?
I've been thinking about that. I think it's unfair to put the municipality in a box like that by saying they must approve it for you to get ours. We'll just limit ours, what we contribute. We'll cut the check. We don't need the paper trail because it falls under, 2.9 of our list here of allowable uses. So we're able to rest on what our audit trail, and I think Steve would agree, we satisfied our requirement. So if they say it's to buy a new van for deliveries and they go, buy TVs and Doritos, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter at that point. We've granted based on their need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't want to box the municipalities in, because then if they say no, we're making them the bad guy, and that's not fair.
But then the matching part that we're contributing might not go to the original
purpose
ask. If it's for 15,000 and we only give them 7.5, then they can't afford you know, you see where I'm going with this? We need some partnerships with the municipalities probably on the front end of that instead of the back end, and we just are out 75. That's my thoughts.
Right, it's just, most municipalities aren't even close to where we're at with this right now.
With the process.
So I hope they join in. I think we're giving them the freedom. I don't see them turning their back on their local businesses, especially when it's not so much. It's not that much, Mr. Arnold. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But there'll be interface. I mean, you'll be able to provide them what we've done, and they can make that match. You're interfacing with Chris Curtis, for example, in terms of what you're talking about, and you have shared with us already that there's going to be an interface and a sharing and a collaboration with other municipalities. Is that a fair statement?
We will try. I will try.
No, you have already talked to Chris.
Oh yeah, I've already talked to all the mayors about wanting to do things together that are on all of our priority list. There's no reason not to. It would only hurt us to go back to our silos.
And what we're really saying here is that we're getting more bang for our bucks in terms of collaboration, and that's what we're trying to do.
Right. The other thing is with this, I think it's unfair just to come to the county. There's other people with skin in the game. So without boxing them in and saying, well, you don't get our money unless they approve it too, we'll do what we have put out in our policy, $10,000 cap. And if they want 20, then they would get our 10. And if the project doesn't happen, it's still a mandate of this law that we try to help businesses. And if they ask for that help, then we're still doing it. So,
Mr. Kidner.
You know more about these ARPA funds than I do, but I have been in many occasions where I had to have 2 approvals in order to get what I wanted done. And the first approval is contingent upon the second approval. I don't see why we have to give $7,500 for a new van if it takes $15,000 to buy the van. We've given them money they can't use and forced them to either put it in a savings account or buy something unrelated to the request. Why don't we keep the money available so when they can buy the van, they have the money to buy the van?
That's an option. It would depend on the...
My only answer is what if that is after 3 years and we don't have the money anymore?
Well, we got several meetings we can have in the interim.
Yeah, well, if you look at the nature of the request, 2.9, I believe, it is small business economic assistance, general. We don't need to really know what the project is for. So they could request $7,500 from us and we could give it to them. They could tell us what it's for, what they intend to do it. To me, that's kind of what these funds were put out there for. It's for not to manage their business. It's for us to be able to provide grants when people can say that they're struggling, they need this to operate, and we give them the money to do that. We're not on the hook to pay it back if they don't spend it on what they tell us that they're going to spend it on.
And I would say that at the QCCI meeting Monday, when the Back to Business program was presented, that same concept was part of this Back to Business. The state government's not going to be monitoring exactly how the money is spent after it is awarded. They're going to assume that the business had a good enough need that they've evaluated the strength of that need, and the award is based on the strength of the need, not a specific project. As chair, I would say you certainly have the right to propose that as our policy. However, Mr. Kissinger. Mr. Swanson.
I think this as a policy for us is a good policy, and I think we're in a good position to be the first person to put a policy out on the table. And if we get negative feedback from all the other communities, maybe we could revisit it. But I think right now, for us, this is a good policy.
Any other thoughts? Discussion. We have a motion on the floor.
It would be our individual cap is $10,000, and if it's within a municipality, the applicant operates within the municipality, or I would say domiciled within the municipality, that we would do 50% up to $10,000 of that request.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion.
Well, I think there probably is. I'm looking at the downside. Should a business or a vendor be penalized because that particular business is domiciled within a municipality? Whereas if they're not within a municipality and they're out in an unincorporated area, what's the comparison in terms of the money being provided? Is there a sharing?
Well, Mr. Hunter, I would suggest one thing, that if they're within a municipality, they are paying taxes to both the county and to the municipality, so they're contributing in a way that maybe it's time for the municipality to return some of that funds when they have these extra money. That would be my position.
Yeah, that's your position, and I'm not sure I can buy that.
Okay. Mr. McCarty, did you want to comment?
Well, I'm just saying, I just don't want it to be necessarily a mandate per se. I understand that there's some concern about policy, but we're getting caught up on minutia, I think. But I guess this is an exercise that we can modify as we go. I don't think everything should be set in concrete, so we'll see what happens.
That's true. Mr. McCarty.
Since we'll be probably part of the application process, if the municipality does not match, do we still do 50%? I don't know if that's intended or not.
That was the intent.
Okay, just clarification.
Well, for example, let me say this to you, because I remember I told you guys before, there was one particular business that I said I had talked to, and they were going to be asking for X number of dollars. They're domiciled within the city of Kankakee. Now, you're going to tell me is that we're only going to give them 50% of what they are asking for in light of maybe the city not having the wherewithal to match our match. And I'm not sure there's some unreadiness on my part, because it goes back to if indeed they make a grant for 15,000 and we only going to give them 7,500, they can't do what they want to do by virtue of what the request was, because the project they want costs 15 grand. So you see what I'm saying, the downside of that?
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Right, and while I do see that, and I actually agree with it, the downside of not doing it is that everybody applies to us and avoids the cities. The cities don't approve anything, and the county has to spend all of its money on the businesses, where there needs to be more participation out of the municipalities.
I'm not disagreeing with
Yeah, and so the only way to start with is having a policy that protects the interest of everybody, and hopefully people will join in that. Because Kankakee's got 14.5 million reasons, and Bradley and Bourbonnais have what, 3 and 2 respectively, and I mean, Moments has $400,000. I mean, all these different towns have money. The only ones that don't have a lot of businesses within them anyway, and so there won't be taxed, so to speak, on their ARPA funds to distribute those.
All I'm looking for is some kind of flexibility within that match that you guys are talking about. So it appears like you're saying that's instant concrete.
Well, it can be revisited down the road if we think we need to change the policy, is what I'm saying.
That's all I want.
Yeah, just like with the caps. We can say we need more because it got worse. Yeah.
Mr. Kinder.
Yeah, I'm probably going to vote nay for this because I am opposed to giving half of what somebody needs. I do believe fully that the municipalities should be involved, and I think that they should come back to us and it would be part of the revisiting that Mr. Hunter just mentioned.
Any other discussion?
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I think we have a motion. Oh, we have a motion. I think I'm going to call for a roll call vote on it.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton? Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
With flexibility, yes.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, the last thing I have is I wrote in, it occurred to me that we should have some proof that this is a business or not-for-profit that is still in good standing. So we should require that they are a business that is within good standing with the state of Illinois. That's part of the prove-up that you saw earlier with the Economic Alliance presentation. So while that doesn't necessarily require a vote, is that acceptable that we get that certificate? If they don't have it, I think there's an online portal that you can look up and see if they're still legitimate business. So, okay,
Yeah.
we'll start. I just want to make sure that that was kind of a assume that we're going to do that. Okay, now the next one, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
The capped non-governmental unit fund, those are those people, as I mentioned, that are, fire departments, park districts, the rural fire departments, the people that didn't get funds before, basically, or weren't covered by this round of ARPA. It's and. It could be both, because some got money, but they weren't covered by this round in and of itself. So the first one, or those governmental units, so the total amount on that one would also be the ask. Do you want to do the same amount of money and see where that leads us down the road?
Yes.
We've got a lot of requests up front, so $250,000 in that one as well. So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hunter makes a motion on that. Is there a second?
Polk.
Polk seconds. Any discussion?
Question.
$250,000, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. If there's no discussion, a voice vote's enough on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Now, my only difference in the stipulations was the amount that I thought, because some of these requests involve equipment that's a little bit more expensive for public safety use, as we're seeing. So instead of 10, I was going to suggest 20 to the group, because those, and it would still have the other stipulations as we have voted before, the municipal match, for their associated municipalities that they serve, those other things as well. So it's basically the 50%, everything that we talked about.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, because I would think that they would be budgeting for that anyway in terms of their capital projects and stuff. So I'll make that in form of a motion.
All right, motion
20.
by Mr. Hunter. Is there a second? Mr. Payton seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion of an individual cap of $20,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And by the way, that had all the other stipulations that we previously talked about. Just want to make sure. Yeah, everything is the same as the other except for the cap. Okay, now we can start having fun. We'll get into the initial list here.
Do we need a separate, or do you say the
No, that
municipal
was
match
part of the
would be?
recommendation, yeah.
All right, the municipal match would be part of the individual cap motion unless someone wants to reconsider their vote. Hearing none, we move on.
Alrighty, now we're going to start with the ARPA Fund. That's the first thing in your packet. The very first item on the list is the vendor, or the recipient, should I say. I put vendor on there, that's probably the wrong thing. It's mechanicals, air, and pathogens. We have to do an RFQ. We need to make that part of the design build bids that we do. This is us basically saying, yes, we want to address air quality in our buildings when we do this. Yep, so that's it goes under 1.7 of the list, so we'll make that part of the motion, if there is one.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Polk.
Mr. Payton seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Alrighty, the next one under ARPA, we received a request from Taylor Publications regarding a series that he wants to do, and it does fall under the ARPA guidelines, if you will. It would be in a number of areas, so we'll pick out the one that best suits it, but it's all over. It fits. So what I was gonna ask is if the board would make a motion to allow us to use the $10,000, but have it be, as I mentioned to Mr. Beavis yesterday, an advertising campaign towards those communities of color that, in a public awareness campaign to get vaccinated if they so choose.
Mr. Payton moves. Mr. Hunter.
Second, that, Beavis spoke to that yesterday. Also, you heard, I don't know if somebody mentioned MBE, SBE, and all that stuff, so it meets that criteria. Call for the question.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
I made the motion.
Mr. Payton, you made the motion, yes. Mr. Hunter, second. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and just so you know, those will be paid as the bills come in with tear sheets that they, ran. So we require the backup. So I just want to make sure everybody knows we're just not handing over. It's paid. We'll work on the plan and everything with Mr. Taylor and figure out how we're going to get that out into the community. There may be other things that we bring back, whether it's billboard or other things, depending on if the variant becomes more of a deviant. As somebody might have mentioned before. So I just want to make sure that you know that that's just the start of that. We can spend some of this money, and we should. The health department is, I don't know if they're doing that or not, but I think we can, so, and should. So we're going on, yes, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller.
I have a quick question. Is this Taylor Publications domiciled in a municipality that will have to match what we pay, or is that not?
It's for advertising, so it's not a grant. It doesn't fall under the grant auspice, but if it was a business grant, then it would.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So it's better, I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Mr. Seroy.
Thank you, Chairman. Did you say what category we were going to put this under?
Yeah, and I apologize. I had it written down upstairs, and I grabbed the wrong thing coming down here, but it will be, one second here. Yeah, it was 1.8. Other COVID-19 public health expense, including communications.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, this will pick up. The next item on here was the staffing to catch up on COVID cases. The circuit clerk had asked for 4 people. We didn't have a total amount on what that was. And my recommendation is because of what the state of Illinois has done to us, taking $5 million a year in revenue away from us, we have to wait and see the budgets. And that also really goes towards the request that Mr. Pennewick had, and I'm assuming what Mr. Rowe will have. I'll recommend that we don't deny, that we kind of push that off and say, let's get together after we get budgets and see what we can spend. Because as we talked about, we can't pass a deficit budget. So if we don't have the revenue to meet our current needs, then we can't just go ahead and keep the people we have and then use COVID money, because then we'll have a negative budget. And both you and I and the taxpayers would be screaming from the rooftops. So I just want to mention that.
Is there a motion to table this one to until the budget 2022?
Table's not the proper.
No, it's just we're not going to act on it right now.
All right.
Yeah, we're going to defer until we have a
defer.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
not saying no, and we're not saying yes. We're saying we know the idea is sound. We got to catch up on cases. Now, how are we going to do it based on the money we have, and for what time period? And that kind of goes to, and we'll speak to that a little bit more. And if you want to handle the public defenders at the same time, it's legitimate. It's under 6.1, which is provision of government services. So we could do this. So we can okay the thought of doing it, but when it comes back, then we'll know based on budget. So I can say, yes, we can approve the thought of it, but just not the implementation. Does that make sense? Because we don't know what the budgets are yet, and we're working hard on that.
Motion to defer.
Okay. Is there?
All right. Mr. Hunter's moved. Is there a second? Mr. Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Now, is that for the other one on public defender as well? Okay. That, so
that includes
no,
circuit clerk.
yeah,
and
I know.
public defender.
It's not no. It's just we got to wait just a little bit longer. And so do you want to explain, Ed, what we're talking about here on the mic, just so everybody knows? as far as what potentially we might want to do as a team.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the protocol of today's meeting. I thought today was a day for presentation, and if I was wrong, and that's fine, as far as formal or informal presentation.
Right.
I've submitted a request, I'll use the term request, back in June, which I have copies of if anyone wants it. But I guess we're talking about two different things, Chairman, as far as the procedure today and the procedure in the future. So I don't know if you want to hear my presentation today, my justification. I'm of the opinion that the ARPA money is there independent of the budget. I know they're not. I know they are intertwined, but I can separate them mentally in my mind as far as the money request versus long-term budgetary concerns within the county. But I'm kind of deferring as to you guys as to what you want to hear from me today.
Well, I was hoping you'd be able to tell them about the need, so when we get back together, we kind of solve that. Like, we have cases backed up.
Oh yeah, if I could sit, I'd rather prefer.
Yeah, please,
sit
come
down
on
if
up.
I could.
Yeah, come on up. This is important. People need to hear this. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the request is valid. The dollars and cents aren't adding up right now.
Yeah, it won't be that long, hopefully. So
you got it.
First of all, my name is Ed Pennewick. I'm the Chief Public Defender in Kankakee County. I'm not sure if everyone here knows me. I was appointed by the judiciary as of September 1st of 2019 to take on this responsibility. Previous to that, I was an assistant state's attorney here in Kankakee County since 1995. I know most of you, but I'm not sure if I know all of you. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. I do want to be clear that if COVID did not happen and the courthouse wasn't shut down for months, I wouldn't be here right now. If the money wasn't available potentially from the government, I wouldn't be here right now. But COVID did happen. We know the effects on our lives and our families. We know about county businesses and how they were substantially affected. I'm not going to belabor the effects of COVID, but to say that it's real, we know it, and it happened. The money is available, it's been allocated, and it's ready. I don't want to repeat what's in my presentation. I do have copies for anyone who doesn't have it. I have many, many copies. I think I went through kind of step by step as to my thought processes as to what I was looking for and why I was looking for it. But I do want to highlight a few things briefly. There's been a real increase in the number of cases pending due to the courthouse being shut down from effectively March 2020 to June 2020. During that period, there was virtually nothing going on at the courthouse. Everyone was working on a skeletal staff. Stay-at-home order was in effect. We couldn't see clients at the jail. Cases were being summarily continued. The right to speedy trial was and still is suspended. Things simply were not getting done for literally a period of months. I know that Sandy can speak to this, Mr. Rowe can speak to this, Tom Latham, the sheriff. There was nothing going forward. After reopening, we had all the cases that were continued. We had all the cases that were called just before the shutdown that were continued. We had all the cases that were up anyway that got continued. We've got all the cases that were filed during the shutdown that had to be addressed. I know Mr. Rowe has been filing more cases that he's been catching up with, so that's been going to grand jury. So those are more cases being submitted to the court system that are real, quantifiable, and directly affecting what we do on a day-to-day basis. That's basically, I mean, that's my biggest concerns right now. I mean, the money I'm asking for is primarily for staffing, if not exclusively for staffing. My money request is directly for the backlog. I put down in my report the statistics. Using the monthly report data, felony cases have increased from my office from 828 to 955, or approximately 14%. Misdemeanors have increased approximately 11%. Traffic's up 32%. As I stated in my report, juveniles down. I think that's because of the fact that many state agencies were closed, DCFS, other agencies that would have otherwise been active during COVID simply were not functioning, so those numbers went down. So that's basically where I'm at as far as the concerns I have regarding the necessity for additional funding. The numbers, I'm not sure if we're talking numbers today or not. I don't know, but I am requesting $175,000 a year. I compute that to be approximately 2.5% of the potential $21.3 million available. That money would be basically have a sunset provision. When it runs out, obviously it would run out. Hopefully, since we're addressing a backlog and not just funding my office, which I'm more than happy to discuss at a later date, when that money's gone, it's gone. And if personnel decisions need to be made within my office, I will do that. But that's all I have as far as that goes. If anyone has any questions regarding this, I guess the small issue and the big issue.
Ed, let me got a question. You're asking, money from these ARPA funds. what steps have you taken to secure soft funds other than these ARPA funds?
I just started getting involved in the grant process. It's not something I do. Obviously my money comes from the county. It's funded almost exclusively, not exclusively, exclusively through the county.
Yeah,
I'm not sure the question.
Well, what I'm saying is that you gotta find some funds. Oftentimes, Roe talks about what he's been able to secure, and we do a match. And I'm not hearing you say that you've done that.
No, I started doing it about 6-8 months ago. I started working with Jim Rowe's grant person because she is much more aware of it than I am, and it simply did not bear fruit at this point. So
yeah, I'm not saying you're derelict in them. You're just saying you never really attempted to do it.
No, I've just started attempting it probably about 6 months ago, and it just, the paperwork, the bureaucracy just didn't happen, and I need to meet with her and go through things again in the future. Obviously, grant money is always,
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just hope the committee realizes the real need for this, and we're not done with this. We just have to, the worst thing we could possibly do is say, yes, we're gonna use ARPA funds to go hire these positions, and then we have to lay them off immediately. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we won't have the general fund budget to pay for it. You've gotta understand how budgets work. And that's part of how budgets work. If there's $1 million allocation to a department, and then we say we're gonna use COVID funds to hire extra people, and that allocation goes down to 800,000 because of the $5 million the state took from us, if we don't reduce that head count, then we've passed a deficit budget. I mean, that's gotta sink in here. We need time to get the budget done. We're not saying no. We have to say we've got to figure out where we're at, and we're getting close to that point. But it's gonna be close. It's not gonna be where we were the years prior, where we had revenue to get out of the hole.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wheeler, do you have a time frame in mind for the public defender's office or any of these other offices that are allocating for staffing? In leading to my question, because it's tough to find people to work right now, and the process might take longer for the public defender or whoever else that's needing staffing. Even if they could go today, they might not actually be able to fill those seats. Or do we have a time frame, or can we advertise or post or headhunt?
I think that's they're doing that anyway.
Okay.
And that's going to be a logistical problem for everyone, obviously, when it comes to personnel.
Right.
So I think, like Mr. Rowe hasn't stopped looking. He can't find attorneys. I would. That's the other big part of this. We're not going to find people to fill this anyway.
That's what I'm saying. If that's going to be more of a problem than the actual dollars, I think, when it comes time to do it, is finding qualified people. So.
And that's not really the discussion today. But,
right.
But no, I've had applications. Requests out for 6 months. I've gotten 3 requests, and none of them are remotely viable. So it's a big problem. I'm actually trying to do some things behind the scenes right now.
And I'd like to see you continue that process.
And just real quick, on the case CR3 form, I did a mathematical typo. I'm asking for 3 years at $175,000 a year. I think I wrote $750 on the form. It's just a complete typo, and I apologize about that. And obviously, any money available that was forwarded to my office, I would appreciate.
Everybody has this, the ask in their packet, so I said ask. So,
anything more? All right, then I think we're ready to move on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. The next item was the plexiglass. If you look at the receipt, it was before March of this year, so the motion would be to deny that because it's against the regulations on reimbursements.
Is there a motion on this?
Motion to deny.
Oh.
Mr. Fairfield motioned, Ms. Polk for Dr. Polk for the second. All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
If this would have came in last year, we could have, and I can't say that we didn't use ARPA money to cover it before, but it's just not our rules, Department of Treasury rules. So the next items, all the coroner items, I'm going to group under 1.7. of the capital investments or physical plant changes to public facilities. You know, so those are mostly capital investments with some equipment in there that are directly COVID related. I will call them out by name: the morgue freezer, mortuary racks, autopsy cart, almost said chart, descendant storage tables, back-of-net delta controls for negative airflow. Now, the employee due to cost due to COVID, that's something that we just need the payroll receipts, and then we could move that back over into the coroner's line item, if you will, and it would go back to March only. It would not go back any further. So I'm asking, saying we should approve that based on the regulations, but we just need to get that back up from payroll. And let me go back just a moment, I'll finish these. And then the completed COVID testing, that was something that was already done and it fits. And then the autoclave. Salary reimbursement will be funded as it occurs. So it doesn't, we don't allocate money ahead for salary reimbursement. It happens when it happens. So please, Mr. Hunter. Yeah.
So what are you asking for?
I'm asking for that motion as noted, basically.
Okay.
For under 1.7.
Is that the 8-pack? He was, I think Cavender, or I don't know if it was Bob who came before us, because you only got room for 2 in the freezer, and you want something 8, right? 6 more? We got guys like Snipes and the chairman.
Let's move on.
Not anytime soon, though, gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a motion to approve as recommended? Mr. Swanson moves to approve as recommended. Is there a second, Mr. Fairfield? Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, just a minute, the coroner would like to make a comment.
Just, and I think I pointed out to you, Chairman, that the prices are going up considerably. So as soon as some of that stuff, I don't know how quick it can be ordered.
It's as soon as the full board approves it. So okay. It's, Tuesday you can let the purchase orders fly. Okay. After the meeting.
We're keeping you up on what the prices are, but they've gone up considerably.
Right. If you get an adjustment before then, it might be good to have it for the meeting.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Bones. Sorry, Mr. Trask.
Right. So we're approving everything except for the record management, correct?
Yes.
It says should not approve on here on our sheet.
Yeah, I didn't.
Already part of the budget.
Yes, exactly. That was my recommendation because it's not. It's in the budget already, and it should remain in the budget.
Mr. McCarty.
Just for technical and the resolution, the $742 I just checked with Eric. That happened before March 3rd, so that is not eligible.
It is not. I thought it came
because
after
of the
March
date. Because of the date.
Because of the date?
The 742,
okay.
So.
Okay.
So all right, that'll be removed from the recommendations. The motion is to agree with the recommendations, and that item is removed from the recommendations.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I don't know how we can do this without that $742, so you want to deny the rest of it? No, I'm just kidding.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. Record management, we need a motion on that. Do you want to speak to that?
Noted. Was there a nay on Zoom to be noted?
Noted, a nay on Zoom.
Is that correct that it was a nay?
Was that? We're unclear. Was there a nay on Zoom?
Are you asking me?
Oh, there's 2 people on Zoom, so either person, did either person on Zoom vote nay?
I voted yes.
Okay.
All right, so that was not.
Thank you. I just heard something. I want to make sure that it wasn't.
Thank you.
Noted for the record. Next item was the basement COVID remodel, the space down there.
Do we need something in terms of record management and action on that?
That was already noted in the previous motion. Yeah. So the motion on that one was it's already funded, so it's a deny on this end, and it's a general fund. So. No, it's already included in the previous.
No, I'm talking about the.
Oh, the basement?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Payton.
Does the committee need explanation where we're at? The drawing of the basement is in the packet. Mr. Bright is here to answer any questions. But the main goals of this project were to take advantage of the $400,000 the state is giving us, couple it with this money, and take care of all the social distancing requirements, the space needs issues that we have over there, which equal COVID. So we think most, if not all of this, can be funded out of the COVID ARPA fund under 1.7, section 1.7, so that's noted for the record. And then if any, we'll go down that path. If something ends up changing and it has to go over to lost revenue, that is a much more substantial fund for us, and we could move it over there if we had to. Just want to make sure everybody knows. Do you have anything, Wes, on this? Please, yeah, go ahead.
Call for the question, so all in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
All right, that was.
And by the way, I wanted to include, I'm sorry, the architectural services for this project as well. That's part of this. It's the next item. So I wanted, is that
part of the motion?
first
Is
and the
there
second?
anyone wishes to reconsider their vote?
That was part of my motion.
I hear no one wanting to reconsider the vote, so the vote stands as noted. Motion carries.
Mr. Lear, Wes had something he wanted to add.
Thank you. As long as Doug's here, I think there's been some misunderstanding with regards to where we're at in the process, just from some dialogue. So as long as he's here, would the committee like to hear an update as to where we stand on the project?
It would be, if it can be brief, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
You're up.
Hello, everybody. Just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with the project. We've been going through this for several months in conjunction with the sheriff's office, the clerk's office, the chief judge, Wes's department, and also the chairman, in terms of how we wanted the lower level to lay out, to function, to improve. And so we've basically completed a preliminary design, which is a preliminary design floor plan, which you said was in their packet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a preliminary design, and what we had as part of the motion was a proposal to move forward with construction documents and a bidding process for the project. So we're just getting started on that. So we're going to be working with the county to develop a schedule, refine the scope. So it's going to be an ongoing process for a while in terms of getting those documents and the bidding process complete. Any other questions? Me personally? We work with IMEG Corporation. They're an engineering firm. They do mechanical, electrical, and they are not a minority firm, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just as a statement, the coordination part of this will begin with the courts, obviously, because there is some disruption, but that's part of this process and figuring out where's jury assembly going to go. We think we know.
Yes, that's going to be
that's a big part of this.
That's going to be part of the whole process. We're going to have to work that into the construction documents, because I would assume that this is going to be a phased approach. Because there's going to be pretty significant disruption to the basement, and we're going to have to coordinate who goes where for what period of time, and how we work around those logistics. Yes.
That was it.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right. Next item up was the, as mentioned before, we have space needs within the courts, and that translates into COVID implications. So we're able to draw that parallel, because we now have a study that says we are too cramped on space, multiple studies, if you will, one recently, and the number of people working in these spaces. So in consultation with the courts, we wanted to go out for a design build RFQ that will include, like we talked about, all of these building projects. Someone to kind of like be Wes's right hand to manage all of these potential building projects. But we first need to know how much it is and build budgets from there. Okay, so we know what we can't afford, which is all new, great big shiny new buildings like they're doing in Will County. We have to approach this as pennies from heaven, and how do we save taxpayers for what they're going to have to spend money on over the next 20 years, and get that done now. So, and do it efficiently. So that's part of this process. So the permission here is to get this going on the design build part of it under 1.7. And we're not spending any money yet. That will all come back through committee and everything. I just need to get your okay that this fits and we need to do it.
That includes the 2 items?
This includes off-site juvenile specialty court space. No, the next item is something separate.
Separate, okay,
Yes.
so this is just off-site juvenile specialty courts. Mr. Feathering moves to approve.
Yes. Steve made
I'm recognizing you first, okay? Is there a second? Mr. Hunter seconds then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And so, you know, part of the thought process is remove the juveniles from the criminal proceedings, and because we want to keep them away from that. That's the judge's ask, if you will. And then we have long-term space issues to deal with. The next item is the circuit clerk's office space. That we're asking that be put on the bid process and the design build prospectus, and then we'll go to the future projects list as we're talking about. That will be ranked. We have to address the circuit clerk's office. I think she will attest to the fact that it's like the bunk room in a submarine. We have ADA issues there. We have space needs, COVID issues. And frankly, you know, it would probably come right after we do the basement because they have to move somewhere while we redo our office. So that's part of the staging process that we go through in a bid process. So I'm just asking for approval to move forward on that, and then it will go on to the ranked projects list afterwards that we will come back and make sure everything's in order.
Mr. Payton moves to approve the recommendation. Mr. Parker.
Second.
Take Parker on that one for a second. If there's no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right, next one, moving right along. The request as a non-covered governmental unit from Bourbonnais Fire Protection. It's for a Lucas device. Chief is here. Can we grab you up at the mic real quick? Per our previous conversation, this fits into our cap, but it also requires me to ask a question. Chief, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
I think you see the board here that wants to help, and we will help on some level. Now, the question I have is, what other municipalities do you serve besides just the township per se? What municipalities lie within those?
The only municipality we serve would be Bourbonnais, and then we do a little bit of Grenier Township also.
Okay, all right.
So
it understanding what we just talked about earlier, the county would authorize basically 50% of that today, and Bourbonnais would be in for the other half. Is that kind of something that you want to proceed with along that path?
We could proceed with and ask them if they'd be willing to do that.
Because I'd be happy to sit with both of you and talk about that. But that when I spoke with their administrator, I said this is one of the projects we think that we should share.
Okay.
And so that's we're not saying no, but you know we definitely want to help with this, but we need partners.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Sound good? So if that's okay, then we could have a motion.
Mr. Fairfield moves to approve the recommendation. Mr. Kitzinger seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Mr.
Thank you again, Chair. I hate to keep asking this. What classification we put? I'm trying to keep track of all these classifications. So
7.3 I have.
7.3, thank you.
Transfers to other units of government. Sounds legit. Yeah.
All right, moving on.
All right. So the next one is the planning department. Delbert's here, and his wish list was coined by another department head, was prolific. So we have a few things on here. The first one, laptops for remote work. It says Mr. Duval will get quotes. They see it as a need. I say we get the quotes and then put it on future projects to be able to talk about what that is. Electronic display system. I have phones, print scan. I would recommend we deny and then spend it as we need it. We just don't throw the money out there. If we actually need it, for printers and scanners, then we'd ask for that demonstrated probably through committee. So, you know, if we want to come back and, you know, Delbert says, hey, I need these mobile scanners so we can do 11 by 17s in the field, is that a COVID reason? Or is that a reason that we need it in the budget? You see my point? I think that some of those conversations should happen on the committee level, but I didn't want to not give him his day in court if he wants to defend that and stand up here in front of the committee, so to speak, and you know, say what we're talking about. But like cell phones for the employees, I don't know that that fits into this request. So that's up to you all to decide, but and we could talk about each one. The electronic display system, it's an ask. It can go to future allocations because it is infrastructure, but it wouldn't be ARPA. It would go into the infrastructure one, and then you could decide whether it's critical or not, or if it goes to the general fund. Website redesign and restructuring, that's actually something we're going to be handling within the county's website project, so we can kind of set that to the side. Del, would you agree? We're dealing with that. We met yesterday on the new county website that we're going to be working on. That's on the other ask list, if you will. GIS employees, that I just listing all requests. We already have searches underway, and it's not bearing fruit multiple times, so we're in the same boat everybody else is. So that's not something that we could do it if we were dedicating an employee towards COVID and mapping out of the ARPA fund, but otherwise it would fall to the general fund. Does that make sense, the way that I'm putting that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we concur with the chair's recommendation.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Mr. Featherin seconds. Any discussion?
I've got to list the rest of them then. I've got to list the rest orally. It's like reading it in the record.
Yeah, we need these in the record.
Permitting software, we should deny that. It's already part of the budget, $20,000 a year. The server, I'm recommending we deny that, abate $4,800. We'll purchase it when it's necessary, and then we'll determine if it's critical infrastructure. Right now, if we need it, we haven't demonstrated the need, and so we can come back through regular committees on that stuff. The counter reconstruction, we would ask. I need to ask the question of Dell. What is the reasoning behind that request? What's the justification, I guess, under the rules of COVID?
All right, we've got a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Scarlett.
I don't know that I understand the rules of COVID, but our counter area is very small and very tight. With the social distancing required, we were able to allow about one person into the counter at a time. So we would like to reconfigure it. We have some open space at the end, extend the counter out. With our new software, people can actually input their own data into our system when they come in to apply. If they actually come into the office, we'd like to have room for a few extra computers there to allow them to be able to do that. So that's the justification there, is to allow more people into the office at one time.
So my recommendation then would be, if it is COVID related, and we think it is, if we think it is, then we put it on future allocations. We get some pricing, and then we look at where that ranks with all of our other priorities.
Yeah. That number was just a guess.
Right. And you know, it goes along with how many computers you would need. So I could see putting one up there now to let customers do their own thing, if you will, but and that's for the committee to decide, but my recommendation would be to put it on future allocations once we get a number behind it. So we could get a bid. Maybe that's part of our design build package, if you will. So just want to make sure everybody's okay with that, or understands that part of it. And webcams, oh, that's probation. Sorry. So that's the end of it. There's a motion in a second. Yep.
All right, we have a motion second. Any further discussion? Motions, Ms. Weber?
Just to be clear, what we're approving then.
We're approving the recommendation as presented by Chairman
with
Wheeler.
the denials and with the allocation for future.
Correct.
Thank you.
And if someone wants to challenge the denials, let's do it. You know what I mean? That's just my recommendation based on the use and those other things that we're talking about budgets. So.
Mr. Fiddler.
Mr. Wheeler, the extending the counter, making the counter larger and everything doesn't fall into the COVID fund?
Well, it might, but is that?
You're spreading people apart. I mean, I thought that was what it was all about.
Well, the question isn't about that. It's where the amount of money stacks up against other priorities. So we're saying, yes, if it does, then we're gonna put it on a list and prioritize that list.
So it's gonna get on a list somewhere?
It'll get on the list.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just not, we're saying pull the trigger right now. We're not. We could we need to get a price and see what that is.
Okay.
So a lot of this is allowing us to go out to bid on things.
So so you can go and ask for bids now?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can work on a design, as long as we're not expending funds on architectural drawings and all that other stuff.
Okay,
so
thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question. I did not hear the document scanning come up on the list.
Yeah, it was deny, spend it if we need it. And so if you want to talk about how that document scanning, are you talking about in the field document scanning? Or
I was talking about scanning our current documents. We have 65 filing cabinets with all of our property records in them. One thing we found out during COVID, that in the field and working from home, we were very limited because we did not have access to any of those files. So we would like to scan them all into a computer database so that we could access them from anywhere.
Do you collect any special funds for that?
No.
Use? Well, then I guess the recommendation is get a price and then we'll put it on the list. Yes. Would you agree?
Mr. Hunter?
Question. Wasn't the sheriff or somebody, or was it coroner?
The recorder.
No, but somebody was using some kind of company that was able to scan all of these records and stuff. Who was that? The
coroner.
Yeah, okay.
We already did.
Yeah, that's what I remember, and then it was a pretty good number. Why can't we consolidate all that stuff into maybe one vendor?
Because the department heads, under administration we can, other department heads make their own choice.
I understand. Well, okay.
So I guess my recommendation is allow that to go forward and get a price and then put it on the list. That would be, if that's okay with the motion that was made.
Okay.
Because we got to know what it is, how much it costs. And how many filing cabinets?
About 65. The number I gave was we had talked to some people in the industry and they said it'd be about $1,000 per cabinet. I would say that
all the way back to 1850?
About 1960 when we started keeping the records.
Okay. Ouch. Yeah, I need to get prices, so that would be the recommendation that I would make.
That would be the recommendation. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And that's under 6.1, Mr. Hess. Provision of government services. And Del, I forgot to ask, it could be head nod, how many times do people, do people come in a lot for those old records? Could they be accessed online? Or emailed?
It's not a matter of people coming in for those records. It's a matter of our staff being able to search those records to find out what happened on a property previously, what permits have been issued. We find a building there that we don't know how it got there. We go back to see if there was a permit on it. Code enforcement is very helpful. Have we issued violations before? Is this an ongoing problem? It's more for our staff than it is the public.
All right, thank you. Moving on to probation, webcams. To me, this seems like it fit because of remote visits on probation. It's $300, so that would be I would recommend yes. And then the monitor, the $500 monitor, I don't see the COVID reason for that. The recommendation will be moved to the lost revenue list, which is your other list that we're going to go through now. So those are the two thoughts I have there.
I'm sorry, that motion came from Mr. Hunter. Is there a second? Polk seconds. We have a recommendation, a motion to agree with the recommendation. If there's no further, Ms. Weber.
I see a third there. What you recommend?
That was going to be separate. Yeah.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right, next item for probation, there was a full program that was put forward by Mr. Latham. It looked pretty buttoned up because they deal with grants quite a bit. Unfortunately, it moves into that kind of social service side of things that I was going to ask that we consider that separately with that group of things, not in today's meeting. It's not a no, it's more like we really need to get our arms around this and how it fits into the overall continuum. And it may be a quick yes based on us going through that in probably our next finance committee meeting. Is that acceptable, Tom? Is there any time sensitive things on there that are like, got to do it right now? Okay. All right. So do you want to explain a little bit about what it is? And, you know, maybe the committee might want to do it now. I mean, it's just to allow you to run the
since
daylight.
COVID started, basically any agency we used for juveniles for drug and alcohol aren't doing in-person counseling. What they do have is some virtual stuff, and it was a huge gap we identified. So we said we hired a counselor that comes in. We keep it limited to a certain number so they can social distance, but we're able to have face-to-face weekly counseling sessions, and that's what that cost was.
Does the committee want to approve that now? Because it's focused just on probation.
A motion by Ms. Parker to approve that now? Is that correct?
It's basically vendor replacement. Or system
Second by Mr.
replacement.
Fairfield.
It's based on COVID.
We had it before, it went away because of COVID, and now we're trying to do something until everything comes back, returns to normal, if that ever happens.
I think that would fall under 6.1 as well. Would you agree, Mr. Hess? Yep. All right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Public defender we've already covered, correct?
Yep. The next one up was the recorder's request. It was modified. I believe everybody was given a new version of this in a separate document today. Originally it was 153,927. Now it's down to 85,000 flat. To complete book scanning and new roller shelves and add digital index of all books to system. So I guess my only question is, it looks like some of my initial questions have been addressed, but is there anything part of this that is covered by a special fund, Lori, to start with? That's our only real hang up. And then if not, yeah, go ahead.
As you know, is this on? As you know, the Recorder's Office does have a special fund, but it is a budgeted fund each year. And when COVID happened and searchers weren't coming into my office and we were identifying the need for something more accessible to them to be able to continue doing their work in order to keep recording in my office, we filled that 12-year gap, which at the time we were hoping was going to be covered by the Cures Act. Because it was an immediate need and it was going to continue keeping people employed and the economy moving forward. So this was never budgeted in my computer fund budget. Do I have a special fund? Yes. My special fund is used more and more for employees now, more than projects. I still budget projects, but I'm not dissolving this fund because I need longevity to maintain staff and operations of my office. So I was asking for originally the scanning project to be covered, but because of that March 3rd date now, that's off, that's not possible. So I have rewritten my request. I take it you don't have my new request?
No, everybody does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had started a book project, which I presented to my committee, that was going to take about 5 years to do, because again, I did not want to deplete my fund and kind of keep that alive for longevity, for at least 3 years of operations if something was to happen. The need for the digital index of these books would increase opportunities for those working from home or other places, not having to come into my office. These books are used every day. People are back there searching all the time for need for to continue with title work and things like that. So I did have an expense this year after March 3rd that I was requesting to be covered, along with just completing the whole project, getting it done, and not expanding it out as long as I had originally proposed to my committee. So the total now is $85,000. I'm obviously eating the rest through my other fund.
Is it
This will be another discussion.
Is that the computer fund?
Yes.
It's a this would come out of, or normally come out of computer fund?
Well, had I planned this out the way originally proposed, it would have been over 5 years. This is to get it done now and get a full index accessible and available online. Because right now, I can't put online what we've already done because it's not a contiguous searchable opportunity. I need it all done so it can all be put on together for creating chain of title and understanding. Does that make sense? I'm a very benign office. I understand I'm not exciting and things like that, but believe it or not, this is a huge need. And my committee has seen what I report each month as how Kankakee County is continuing to flourish and improve and grow. And most of that is done because of the opportunity to search good records in my office. This is just going to give more opportunity so that those people aren't having to travel to come in here. Should something happen where we're on a lockdown again and limitation, this is going to open up opportunity to continue the cycle going in a good, smooth circle.
Can I get a motion?
Mr. Hunter,
Motion to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
I will just say this violates your already stated policy of using special funds before
Well, I'm sure.
ARPA funds. You've just now violated your own policy if you pass this. There's over $500,000 in this special fund.
But I thought she said she, go on.
So existing today is about $500,000. Keep in mind, right now, of that, $180,000 is budgeted each year for operations of my office. $135,000 is budgeted for the general fund to operate my office. That number is only going to continue growing. So of my budget to be used each year, which means that fund balance is not always going to be strong. And now, because I'm going to have to do a budget amendment down the road here to cover those other expenses that unfortunately weren't covered by Cures Act or this March 3rd date thing, there's a good chunk of money that's going to come out of that fund to cover those expenses.
Is there discussion?
So she's saying that her special funds are obligated. And
A portion of them.
I show excess revenue of $56,000 over expense every year.
Well, I didn't hear you articulate that at the circuit clerk's office.
That hasn't come up yet.
Well, in terms of special funds.
I don't pick favorites. We set a
No,
policy.
I'm just saying, I didn't hear that being articulated.
Mr. Kinzer.
Yeah. I, for one, have always believed that computers are absolutely necessary. And if it violates a policy, we need to consider it. I think to get this stuff online years sooner is to the advantage of all.
Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask a question then of Lori? Has there been more computer or internet traffic through your office with some of the systems in place?
Absolutely so, and as well as phone calls coming in asking us to email them information because it might not quite be accessible to them through their current method.
And do you see more internet traffic coming through with the increase in people moving to Kankakee and businesses?
Well, I mean, absolutely. You know, people right now are getting ready for the auction that's coming up, so they're using our system to look into properties that are going to be available. I mean, there's various different reasons. Every day somebody comes into my office or has a need to use services from my office to get a good clean title search or whatever.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? We have a motion. Are we ready for the vote?
Yeah, we are ready. Moved and second. Ready for the vote.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hunter, we have not done the vote yet. And I will decide when discussion is ready unless there's a call for a question.
Hey, we're not here to debate. All I said, there's a motion and second.
Okay. All right. It would be, unless someone wants a roll call, it would be a voice vote.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Feathering?
Mr. Chairman, could you run that motion by us again? That was a while ago.
The motion is?
To approve, and Hunter making the motion and Parker is the second.
So this motion is to approve spending of the money with the revised amount of, how much?
The 85?
87,000?
The 85 instead of the
85,000, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't have the number in front of me.
Is that Mr. Hunter made the motion?
Mr. Hunter made the motion and
Ms. Parker?
Ms. Parker seconded. Is that clarified? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lear?
No.
Mr. Hess?
Please pass the policy.
Number 15?
I hate to do it, but I gotta say no.
15,
okay.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Nay.
Mr. Payton? Ms. Parker? Did you say nay? Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Nay.
Mr. Featherling?
Nay.
Mr. Miller?
Nay.
Mr. Long?
Nay.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Nay.
Motion failed.
We move to the next item.
The last one was the request from the sheriff on a formal quote to, should be connect with jail, send, and the recommendation was to get the bid and then send that to future allocations. It's something that involves, I believe, the courthouse and corrections. And so we need to get the formal bid on that and then put it on future allocations again where that whole list is ranked. So that's the recommendation there. That would be a simple.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Mr. Kinzer moves to approve the recommendation. Polk seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right, that's it for that stack. This had to be done.
Now, do we need a motion in terms of
the roll call for the whole thing?
Roll call for the whole thing.
Yes.
Okay, now this would be a roll call for the whole thing because it involves, some of these recommendations involve spending money. So we need a motion to proceed with spending money for those that aren't involving. Ms. Weber moves, Mr. Fairfield seconds. I need discussion on spending the money on the recommendations that involve spending money.
So the motion that I made was to spend money only when it was noted to spend the money, right? Okay.
That is my understanding, yes.
And to go out to bid and to do all of the things that we talked about, motion to deny, as we mentioned, all of that stuff.
All right.
Or to put on future allocations.
Right.
Mr. Hunter.
Yeah, just a question. Would the committee reconsider an amendment that the recorder had submitted to us? Pardon? No? Okay. I was just wondering, I mean, she's a revenue generator, and you know, it's really interesting that we did a roll call as opposed to a voice vote on that particular matter. I'm not sure what the rationale was, but.
Well, the room was divided, Mr. Hunter, and so I can tell we needed a roll call because the yays and nays wouldn't have done it. Well, any board member can ask for a roll call.
Any board member can ask for.
Well, I understand that. But I thought I just spelled skunk on that, that's all.
Well, that's kind of offensive, actually.
Pardon?
It's kind of offensive, actually.
Well, I mean,
We set a
skunk is.
policy and it wasn't
Order. Let's have a little order, please.
That's all. You know, this is America, not with a K.
All right. We have a motion on the floor. If there's discussion on the motion, I'll entertain that. Otherwise, we'll go to a roll call vote. Hearing no discussion on the motion on the floor, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker? Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now, moving on to lost revenue fund. We're actually doing okay, 1111. First item is the Bourbonnais Township Park District. These lost revenue funds, we do not need to note the section based on the ARPA rules because these are based on lost revenue. The same rules do not apply to these as we mentioned before. So,
just a minute, Mr. Chairman. We're having trouble with our packets.
Yes, it's in there.
yeah, it's in there. It might be on the back page, the
Yeah, it is
initial.
on the back page.
Could we help people find that, please?
It's just found wrong, so the last request was in the corner.
All right.
Cut the deck right to it.
Have people been able to find that? Anyone not found it yet?
How far back is it?
A little bit more than halfway. They see Lex mortuary request. It's on the end.
Let's make sure everybody's found it before we proceed. Did you find it? All right, if everyone's found it, then we can proceed.
All righty, the first one is kind of I want to say the test case that we had going through our committees. Mr. Clark is here, but most everybody here has heard that request. He did actually prove up his lost revenue number. So in this fund, you would have to show that you had lost revenue in order for us to be able to allocate towards that. That was our stipulation that we had. So with that, would it be a recommendation to approve that 9853 as a lost revenue reimbursement? So there'd be a motion.
We have a recommendation. Is there a motion? Mr. Feathering makes a motion to approve the recommendation. Ms. Weber seconds the motion. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
The next item is a business request from Lax Mortuary. It actually falls under section 2.9 of the ARPA money spend. So I'm recommending that we approve that under the stipulations we just established earlier, that it's the request amount was, let me get to that real quick. Sorry, had to give me a totals page. It was 14,700, I believe. Yeah, $14,700. And so we are in for 50% of that per our rules. So if there's a motion on that, we can move forward on that.
Mr. Hunter.
May I?
Yes.
Paul.
Thank you. I'm just making sure that I can do that. I said move to approve.
All right, motion to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Payton?
I said Polk.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Dr. Polk.
Oh, that's okay.
And is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
So that will move over to the ARPA list, if you will. The Career Center was the next one, had a EMT program. I'm mentioning that will be part of the impact projects that we're going to be looking at as far as the larger social service / education workforce stuff that we're doing. So this is not a no, just basically saying, yes, we agree we should move forward in exploring this.
You have a recommendation. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Mr. Parker, Mr. Hunter seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of the recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All righty. The next one was document scanning for the circuit clerks. It's the same policy that we discussed before. There are special funds that are collected for this purpose, but we support anything over the use of those special funds, which means leaving a reasonable amount to do other things. So you know that it's the policy that we passed. So it's deny this request. That was the recommendation.
Listening very intently on this.
Is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Ms. Weber moves to accept the recommendation. Is there a second? Mr. Featherling seconds. Any discussion? Mr. Kissinger.
I'm going to vote no on this for the same reason. I think we should take advantage of every computer enhancement that is available to us as soon as possible.
Any other discussion? Hearing no other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Nay.
Mr. Kissinger voted no. Moving on.
All righty, next item. As Mr. McCarty talked about, the printers and the copiers, those are deemed critical infrastructure to the county. He is preparing the RFQ. We've already heard the stipulations, just need the okay to go ahead and place it on this lost revenue fund list when we get it back, and you will have the chance to approve that later, once we get the determination from state's attorney.
Motion to accept the recommendation by Mr. Hunter, second by Mr. Payton. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the recommendation say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Next item, new website. As mentioned earlier, talking with Dell and his needs, our website is critical infrastructure required by law on a lot of areas to exist, to do certain things. It's just to put, we're talking to, we had started with a few companies and we narrowed down on people that do government websites and know exactly what is going on. So we're going to bring a number back, but it's basically to approve that this is critical infrastructure. It's something we want to address.
Is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Mr. Featherling, a second. Mr. Hunter. All in favor of accepting the recommendation, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All righty, next item is the request from the chief judge on doing an RFP on a new court management system. This is a big ticket item, something that's a long process. And so the question is that something that we want to address? And I think it is something that we agreed. It's a big drain. The only recommendation I have for the committee is that we lead the project. That's the only recommendation, because we have a bond that we're paying for the current system, even though it's very non-functioning. I'm not comfortable getting into this project if we're not leading it.
And then we gotta eat
with
what?
the courts.
We gotta eat what, a couple million, what do we gotta eat?
About $2 million by the time this is implemented on a bond. But the system is the only one that exists in the state of Illinois, and anytime there's an update, we're at the mercy of the company to do things when they want to do things or when we get to it. It's just, if we're gonna go down this process and we're gonna pay for the same system twice, I guess, that's the only stipulation that I would put on it, that we lead the project with the courts.
Is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Mr. Kissinger?
Mr. Long.
Mr. Long, second, was that?
He made the motion.
Yes. Oh, all right, Mr. Long made the motion. Mr. Kissinger seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of the recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Next item was a Wi-Fi boost broadband improvement. This was on the original list. I don't know, Kevin, are you here? Is that still necessary, or has that been addressed at the courts between the request coming in and now?
It's been addressed, and they've purchased through another grant some, I don't know if this mic is on.
It's on.
Okay, some additional Wi-Fi units to expand or replace. So unless this is something I'm not aware of, it's been addressed. But it could be something new that I'm not aware of, but as far as I know, yes, it is.
Okay. So this one will be just kind of hold for now, and if it becomes necessary in the new technological improvements that we're doing in the courts, potentially remote traffic and other things that we're looking at, then we'll address it then. Acceptable? So we're just kind of leaving it off for now, but it may come back.
I don't think we need a motion.
Yeah, we don't need a motion.
All right, move to planning.
There's a bunch of things that planning asked for that would fall into lost revenue. One was a series of scanners. I've kind of asked Kevin to get involved in that, to get the pricing and what the need is with Dell. What types of scanners? The ones is, if we're doing new copiers, can we put the scanner on the copiers and everybody doesn't get one at their desk? Trying to be frugal with this as much as possible. So what my ask would be is to go out and get pricing. And then this may be the mobile scanner that Dell is talking about as well. Dell? The mobile scanner, is this part of this ask? Okay. So we just want to make sure that we're aware this isn't the final approval, but Kevin's doing some work on the back to see what exactly we need and what those costs are. If you agree that those are, we should at least have a scanner and maybe a mobile scanner, that would be the opportunity to approve this. We just don't know what the whole picture looks like, and then it'll go on the allocations list.
So we're going to take that individually?
That would be the first one. I'm sorry, I was finding my place. A counter computer. Delbert had asked for 3 of those, but is that necessary to start with? Could you use one right now? Would be my question to Del. Yeah. So that would be the ask. If we can get Kevin to recommend the type of computer for the public to engage in at the desk, and that's the approval ask right now. Next one. Credit card reader. Del had asked for 2. I don't know a reason why we'd need 2, maybe 1, but there is a reason to take credit cards at the counter in the planning office. So I would recommend that we would go forward with 1. And it would be integrated with up to Kevin's specifications as far as IT. Mr. Featherling is.
Steve.
Mr. Featherling.
As far as those scanners go, is that something he wants to, for the credit card readers, can he add fees on in the field if they have the 2 instead of just the 1? I mean, could they be out in the field and add a $50 charge for coming back right on the card and not have to come back here and do it if they have 2? That's why I think that they really do need 2. Come on, Del.
Sheriff has comments.
Sure.
Yeah, about planning, go figure. Delbert, we use at the jail, and the circuit clerk uses a company called Court Money, where they take the credit cards and they charge the fee. The fees go to the credit card company. The purchaser pays those fees, but it doesn't cost anything. Including the readers.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Court Money.
Because we have at least a dozen.
And we take bonds at the jail. They take stuff at the jail. So I don't mean to step on anybody's toes.
I'm also all about saving money too. Our current software program allows the acceptance of credit cards, but only when applying for a building permit or contractor registration. There's many other times though where people are in the office and they want to pay their fees, fines with credit cards. That's why the credit card reader at the counter would be helpful, because our computer system doesn't allow that currently.
Okay. Well, we may have a no-cost option, so that would be good.
Increased size of the counter, 1 at each end or something would be helpful, but one would be fine as well. Okay, so
that's enough for right now. 1 seems like it's legitimate for the uses of your office.
Yes, and I have no intention of using them in the field.
Good.
So
we'll get Square for that, you know, a little thing you put in your phone. So remote inspection software, if you want to discuss that, Dell, remote inspection software, you might as well stand over there for a minute. Is that $2,000 a year plus, or $2,000 plus $500?
$2,000 to buy the software, about $500 a year on maintenance fees. And we didn't get exactly hard cost on that, but we did look into it. Software would allow the applicant to, it's almost like FaceTime, where the contractor or the applicant can be on site and our inspectors here, and it's an interactive video so that they can show them what needs to be inspected and they can take them around the building. We would not use that for everything, but one thing we learned last year with the social distancing and all that, some of our inspections were difficult to do. So this would be another tool in our toolbox that we could utilize.
And would you have the ability to support that maintenance? Is that another one of our policies, is we'd have to be able to support that maintenance after this money is gone?
Out of our contractor registration fee that we, that is paying for our building permit software, yes.
So is the committee comfortable moving that forward under that auspice?
Yeah.
I might be able to fit it into an ARPA category because I didn't consider remote stuff, staying away from people. But they still want, there's a lot of building going on last year. You might have heard things.
There was. And like I said, those were some estimates. It could be 3,000, it could be 1,800. I don't know exactly yet.
Have you ever done time studies, how long it takes to get to and from your average inspection?
No, but I mean, we cover the entire county, so just driving to Yellowhead could be 30 minutes.
So you may be saving an hour per inspection, so that adds up cost-wise.
You know,
This
just
may pay for
to do a post-hole inspection that they could video for us with a tape measure.
Plus, it's customer service oriented. Yeah. Would the committee agree? I guess motion second. Well, wait a minute. There's one more. Two more. Sorry. We got digitized files. We already spoke on that. We're going to get a bid because there is no special fund that supports that. I want to make sure everybody understands that. There's no money collected from the public for that specific purpose.
That entire portion of my office is paid for by building permit fees, but it's not a special fund. Those fees go into the general fund. The county board reallocates it back out to us.
And last thing was the code and manual online access, $800 per year. What's the justification on that?
To give my inspectors access to all of our codes and all of the code manuals anywhere they're at. Currently, we have hard copy books in our office. Last year, they had to be in the office to review any of those codes. These are subscription services.
So if they had iPads, would those hard documents be on the iPads or remote devices that you would
With the subscriptions, they would be. I mean, these are copyrighted documents, like the entire BOCA building code or the IRC building code. We can't just scan those and put those in, but we can subscribe.
These codes are available is online?
No, we have hard copy books in the office. But this would allow them in the field to check a code. They don't have to carry the books with them.
You say that we have the money afterwards to pay for this in the budget?
What was the question, sir?
The remaining amount, the maintenance on it? Because we talked about we don't want to have this big bureaucracy and all these payments after this is over with that we can't support.
It's a subscription fee. That's a yearly fee.
And that's $800 a year.
About $800 a year for all the codes that we use.
How many users?
What's that?
How many users?
I think the 800 gets you up to 10.
Okay. All right.
Makes sense.
Okay. Is there a motion on this group?
Well, we need a motion to accept the recommendation. Mr. Featherling motions, Mr. Hunter seconds. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of accepting the recommendation, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right. This one's going to be fun. The sheriff's request.
Let me check on this. Could we specify, are we going to try to combine all of these with one recommendation, or can you identify the ones that you want?
The first one needs to be separate. The rest of them will all be combined.
All right.
Yeah. So this sheriff's request, 2 corrections vans. That's a bid. and we were to send to future allocations. Would you have a comment on the 2 corrections vans, Sheriff?
I put that on the list obviously because vehicles, as you guys have already approved and heard, are tough to come by, especially police vehicles. Vans, transit vans are the same way. We actually found 3 transit vans, and if you recall, the full board already approved the purchase of one of the vans for animal control. So that's we don't need to even mess with that. The other 2 vans, however, are in Greenfield, Illinois, at the state bid price at $44,280 for a total of $88,560. They are sitting on the lot waiting to hear from me after this meeting.
Is there any indication these will be available in 2 weeks?
I don't know.
Or not? I mean, just the,
I mean, they're holding them for us right now.
Okay.
I don't know what they're, I mean, the fact that we found these 3 vans, I mean, we've looked for vans everywhere, and there are no vans to be found. It was a fluke that we found these.
Okay. So it's state bid price. I think we're asking to move on these and then have the full board approve it.
Yeah.
When we get to the full board, availability is a big issue with these vehicles. So.
I'd like to make a motion to get them all again.
You'll need to put that on the mic.
I'd like to make a motion that we get them while they're available, because we're waiting years for vehicles.
The motion's there. Mr. Fairfield seconds that motion. Is there discussion? Ms. Parker, did you have discussion?
No, I was
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is this one involved in spending money?
We should roll call this one.
I think they should be roll called, yeah.
I wish.
Well, it said bid, so that's why I was confused.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Mr. Payton? Ms. Parker? Mr. Kinzinger? Okay. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Thank you.
Insults will continue.
All right, if we continue.
The next one was the corrections bus. That would be a formal bid process, not quote. And then we would recommend sending it to future allocation so we can rank them all with everything else.
Correct, yeah, we are still exploring the best options for us at this point.
Okay. The next item was and these are all going to be grouped together under 1.7.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows
Andy, Mike, your microphone.
Oh, I apologize. Roll call. These next few would be all grouped together. So the corrections bus, again, would go to future allocations once we put it out to bid. Same with the body scanner, once we get a formal quote.
I have one.
Okay. All right. We can write that number down. And
159,000. Which, just for the record, was significantly less than the 600,000 that I estimated when I asked for it. That's a huge savings, people.
Good thing we didn't approve it. So it's 159 again. Would go to future allocations list to be prioritized. The JCDC outdoor rec area that may fall into COVID, but it's I don't know, it's kind of a stretch, so we have to do some talking about that. Right. It's on lost revenue right now. Have you got any bids so far?
No. Nothing yet.
So it'd be allowing us to go get bids on that, potentially with our design build RFQ if we want to include that into that. The 10 LPR cameras. This one might take a little bit of explaining. Are these the license plate readers?
Yes.
Okay.
And they would have come in real handy with the homicide and moments last night.
So, and
2 nights ago.
Those are to be deployed all in the rural areas of the county, maybe
Yes.
in municipalities in partnership with.
There are already some in the municipalities, which have been beneficial to those municipalities. But for the 20, this would be 10 cameras that we are able to move to set different locations depending. And I think for $27,500 a year for the 3 years. And again, following that 3-year period, you know, I think we evaluate whether we need all 10, whether we go down to 5, whether we go down to 0, or whether we find other ways to fund it.
And so is the committee's, I guess, pleasure to move on, is it 27.5 total for the 10?
Per year.
Per year. And so is it the committee's pleasure to send it to future allocations, or do you want to have it be like, let them move on these now? So I guess let's handle that with a motion within the greater motion for this group. So like, if there's somebody who has a pleasure on that, make the motion to do it now or to put it on future allocations.
Mr. Featherling.
I'd like to make the motion, we do it now.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Payton seconds that. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, that's spending money. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton? Aye. Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
For clarification, that's for the 3 years and then we reevaluate then?
Yes.
First and second? Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, we budgeted after that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Next one is animal control building. That'd be a to be determined because we'd have to do design build on that. Or if it's a retro, find a property. There's a big process on that. I just want to make sure we're still okay to go forward with that, and it could be called infrastructure.
And we still have, obviously, IPTIP funds, so
right.
The ask is probably won't be as great as the full price because we do have some IPTIP funds and some BARC funds.
So this is just to move it to that future project allocation list. And then once we start plugging in numbers, it's ranked. Next one was training. It was just a general bucket. We were hoping to get like some specifics, you know, on.
As are we are waiting on some of the things from House Bill 3653 that are gonna require more training. So with the changes and with the trailer bill that passed, they have backed up some of the training requirements. Some are still immediate, but other training is gonna be pushed out. So again, we'll get more specifics on cost and what it's going to entail for our staff at a future date.
Okay. So maybe just push this one off until later? Is that where we're not going to consider it now, but we will consider it later once we have specifics? Correct. Makes sense? Okay. So I'm going to cross that one off with everybody's permission. All right. The 2 drones, did we ever get a formal quote on that?
I do.
For what you want?
$17,697 for both. Those are FLIR drones, which allow us to use them at night. For those of you that may have seen a couple weeks ago, the bank robbers ended up down in I think it was the Paxton area. We sent the drone we had down there, which was great because it was during daylight hours, but the offenders actually were in a cornfield. And once it got dark, the drone really wasn't capable of seeing anything. So those would be a big help for us.
Is that something the committee would want to consider separately and allow them to move on? And that's for 2 of them?
2, yes.
2, okay.
So they're about a little over $8,000 a piece.
Is there a motion to approve that recommendation? Ms. Parker, seconded by Mr. Fairfield. Any discussion? That would be a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Wheeler? Aye. Motion carries.
The next one is the virtual reality trainer. I was almost looking at this as the same as the other training. Once we get together the total bucket of training, then we can do those all at the same time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because there is a solution at KCC now, but again, the night shift can't train.
Right. Yeah, it's limited.
That's the big issue.
It's limited.
And so we need to figure that out. So if we're hold off on that, but we need to wait. It's not a hard no. The 10 camera thermometers. It falls under 1.
I would withdraw that.
You withdraw it? Okay. It fits, but temperature is not a good indication of COVID anymore.
It's not.
Yeah, so. The 25 computers, I had Kevin bid, but it seems like you got a guy too, so.
Well, we've kind of been, for the last few years, kind of separate.
Yeah.
So we actually have a price of $806.51 a piece. And what we do may be different than what Kevin does. We actually buy the parts and we build them. So I think they're a little cheaper. Would that be accurate?
About the same, but they use a lot of the same sources.
Yeah. So the total would be $20,162.75 for 25 computers.
Okay. Is there a motion to
Unless
consider?
Kevin wants to buy them for us. That'd be fine too.
Sorry, turn his mic off.
That's approximately the same price that it's a little bit cheaper than what we would have paid, so, which is what you're looking for, is to be in line. The one thing I could say, and I don't know if that's added in there, they may need an updated version of Office, which would throw another $300 on top of that. Okay, well then, if that includes the Office, then that is much cheaper than what we're doing with their build.
Okay. We're gonna get the Sheriff's Department to start ordering our computers for us. So do you want to move on that one separately?
Let's make a motion to move on that. Purchase that.
Mr. Featherling, you're moving to approve?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Fairfield. Second by Mr. Long. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
That's okay.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item was a new payroll system. Pricing was TBD. I asked that we first schedule meetings with the vendor and the users in the Sheriff's Department to make sure that we're just not misusing the system or don't know about things that can be done to solve the problem and workarounds.
Correct.
If there isn't a workaround, then we can gauge that against the total cost and man hours to change our payroll system. Is that fair? Okay. All right. So that's the process. We'll go through this methodically in a project way. So last item, I believe, the sheriff's request. It does fall under 4.1 of the ARPA laws that say that we may provide a bonus to staff. My recommendation would be to put it on future allocations. Don't say no. Kind of gauge what we have down the road, but that's this committee's pleasure. So just keep in mind that you do for one, you do for all. So.
Well, I guess I would say that during COVID, when offices closed down, and Mr. Pennewick referred to earlier, the courthouse closed down, the courts closed down, our guys didn't stop responding to calls, and our correctional officers didn't stop booking prisoners in. So it's a little bit different. I don't think you have to, if you do it for one, you have to do it for all. I think you have to look at, unfortunately, we couldn't close down, and we still dealt with the same problems. We handled the COVID issue in our jail 1,000 times better than the Department of Corrections has handled theirs. And they did it knowing the dangers. They did it knowing some of the consequences, and that's the reason for my request.
Thank you. All right, you have the recommendations, Mr. Featherman.
Mike, how is that going to be paid to, would that be like a one-time thing or a per hour increase for being hazard pay, like type pay?
The request is the $1,000 per employee. How this committee or payroll decides to pay for it, I guess, is up to them.
Okay.
I don't have a preference.
Okay. Thank you.
So I guess the question is, do you consider it separately and approve it, or do you go with the put it on future allocations and then rank it against other priorities? That's the question. So if there's not a motion, then it goes in with all the other things that we've talked about in that section.
Okay. I'm gonna make that motion, because
Which one?
Mike wouldn't be doing this if he didn't really think it was necessary. I believe that they went out on a limb for everybody. They went to work every day. They didn't get to stay home.
Is there a second? Mr. Fairfield seconds. Discussion?
How many? How many bonuses?
Does your motion indicate?
Oh, I don't have a many.
It's 180 all told, but that does not include some of our employees who did work from home. So that is just essential employees.
That's the people who went out in the field, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Discussion.
I will say that other labor groups asked for this during negotiations and we did not give it to them. Expect grievances, in my opinion.
Well, how would we know? How would that have on that?
They were not required to be here either.
The negotiating teams knew that, so.
Yeah,
there was also a lot of people who didn't stay home that actually worked every day in the county. So you're just not approving, in my opinion, the 180 or whatever. It goes up to exponential over the top of that.
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
I'm not trying to sandbag. I say we move it to the future allocations and see what we've got when we've got it.
Okay.
Because I'd rather give it to our employees before we give it back to the government.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I think they deserve it.
Right.
But I think there's priorities, and they were paid while they were here. Yeah. And I think that if there is money left at the end of this, it should go to employees rather than back to the federal government.
But a lot of frontline workers got paid extra money for going in to work. No.
I understand you've withdrawn your motion.
Yes.
All right, the motion is withdrawn. We need a motion to approve the recommendations in terms of, oh, I'm sorry, we've got 3 more items. My fault.
Oh, no, that was the last of the sheriff's department.
Oh, okay, we've got to do all the sheriff department requests that we did not previously act on. Is there a motion to approve the recommendations in terms of the sheriff's requests that were not previously acted on? Mr. Miller moves to approve those recommendations. Is there a second? Mr. Fairfield seconds. Discussion? All in favor of approving those recommendations, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
The next item is, thank you. The next item is CANCOM. It's a station alerting project. Is Tammy here?
Tammy's not, Chairman, if I can speak about it.
Sure, please. Please tell the committee who you are. Most people know.
I'm Scott O'Brien. I'm actually the county board appointee for the ETSB board and also fire chief of Manteno Fire. With the COVID, with the staffing crisis as well as the consolidation, our staffers are overworked. Where that ends up hurting the fire and thus the project, and we don't have it budgeted for, is if the dispatcher who is dispatching the fire departments is the 911 call taker. They're taking the information, they're walking through the caller with CPR or evacuating the residents. They're typing in the data, but he's not able to page it out to the fire departments, causing a 30-second to 4-minute delay on the departments getting out the door. A lot of times during the daytime, we're listening to the police radio as scanning. We find out about a structure fire, an ambulance call, a car accident from the police dispatcher notifying the local police department before we get the page. So we've identified this as an urgent need to help with our ability to serve our public, but we don't have it budgeted for, thus we asked for consideration.
Thanks. I had asked Ms. Peterson to bring her special fund or her reserve numbers with, and she had mentioned that we should have those numbers ourselves, so I went ahead and pulled those up. And I guess first of all, do you know if what the other municipalities said when they were requested for a portion of this that are part of CANCOM? Do you know if they were asked? Or is it just us?
No, you were the initial ask.
Okay, all right. Well, CANCOM is made up of what? Kankakee, Bradley, Bourbonnais County, Manteno.
It's the entire county now.
It's pretty much the entire county.
Yeah, so police departments, over 20, there's 17 fire districts and departments. They also handle the Riverside, Superior.
Okay.
So it is the entire county
It's
now.
the entire county. I would say that's one reason why I don't know that we should act on this, in my opinion, because we're a group that should share the cost proportionally if in fact we want to do that. The second thing is there's $8.4 million in their reserves. I would argue that they could pay for this out of their reserves, much like we've already talked about with the special funds of the county. So that would just be my own, you know, you just can't, and I'm not saying this is the intent with any of these requests, but by default, you can't sandbag your special funds just to get this money and save money for down the road. That doesn't really work with the process. It shorts other things. And so I would just recommend that maybe if it comes back as a group project, I think maybe that we might entertain that. So I would say recommend bring it back as a group project or not at all. That'd be kind of my recommendation. So you can decide that now, or I can keep going and we could, you know.
All right, is there a motion to accept that recommendation or some other motion?
Motion to accept, Chairman.
Motion to accept, and Polk seconds the motion to accept the chairman's recommendation. Any discussion on that? I hope that the message would be taken back that we certainly would be open to working with a group in terms of how to properly fund this need. Because I like the concept of working with the group.
And even if it's half of it comes from reserves and the other half comes with new contributions, I mean, that we've all got COVID money to spend and we might as well do it for the right things. This might be one. It's just it can't all fall to us.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Next one, make you get back up. Manteno Community Fire. So that one we had just talked about. We have the request, and I went back and forth with Chief yesterday about the lost revenue in their ambulance part of the, which is a big part of it, and they were asking to cover that loss off the $86,681. We had already established that cap of 20, but I have to ask the Chief: do you service Manteno as well?
Yeah, so we cover 96.3 square miles. It's the township of Manteno, Rockville Township, half of Sumner, a northern part of Bourbonnais Village, and Manteno Village.
Okay. So would you, by population wise, I'm just curious, do you know how that breaks out?
It's probably 80% live in the village. 92% of the land coverage we cover is township.
This township. So yeah. The cost is the miles when you're driving the pumper, right? Correct. Yeah. So is this 50-50 a fair split if we approach Manteno about doing the same thing?
I would be fine with that.
If we're 20 and they're 20, you're still left with a gap, but I'm just wondering if that's a workable solution.
I would do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's better than, you know, the other alternative.
Correct. So
is that something you want to act on separately to allow that to happen under our rules, capped fund?
Is there a motion?
And it's for 20.
And it fits under 6.1.
A recommendation, or motion to approve recommendation by Ms. Weber, second by Mr. Fairfield. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right, last one on this is Limestone Fire Protection District. See them here. This one was based on revenue loss. The total was $77,830.62. I've got a listing of all their expenses, and there's only one that qualifies from 5/5/21. So I would recommend that this would be considered lost revenue and not reimbursements because we can't reimburse it. And so if we are able to get, hold on just a moment, please. The lost revenue number, it seems like it would fit that this would be Village of Limestone and us share this 50-50. So that would be the recommendation, is if we are able to ascertain that they did have a lost revenue between 19 and 20, then we would be in 50-50 with the Village of Limestone. Is it a city or a village?
Village.
It's a village. Yeah,
Village.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Weber. Yes.
You're saying that's an unknown number according to these records.
Well, yeah, they're asking for $7,800, and much like the same case with the Park District, we figured out a way to cover this expense but call it lost revenue.
Oh.
And they're not asking for more than that. So that's what we would approve, is half of the 78-30-32, and then hopefully the Limestone Fire Protection, or Limestone Village would choose to support them as well.
So this is called now lost revenue rather than masks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not, we can't reimburse for stuff from last year, per the regulations of the Department of Treasury. And believe me, if I said something wrong, Steve would jump up and go to the mic. So.
All right, is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Mr. Miller, Mr. Fairfield seconds. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All righty, so you're ready for roll call on the whole thing?
Yeah, we need a roll call on all of the recommendations, including the spending of money and other recommendations. Is there a motion to accept all those recommendations? Mr. Featherling, is there a second? Mr. Long's a second. And is there any discussion? Ms. Weber.
The motion is implying that all these projects we're talking about lost revenue.
Yeah, that's under the lost revenue fund. And there's one or two that we said we're gonna move it over to ARPA, like the Limestone, the Mantino Fire Protection ones, the sheriff request bonus to staff. It would go on the list, but it would still be allocated towards COVID reasons, as noted. 2.9 under lax mortuary, I believe 4.1 under the bonus for staff, 6.1 for both the fire protection districts.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, we need a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All righty, I'll try to be quick. The RFQ, we're wanting the permission to go ahead and prepare an RFQ to look for that partner to help us organize, hold the meetings, get everybody together to figure out what gaps are in our systems, if you will, with its substance abuse, mental health, workforce training, all of those things that we've been talking about that have gaps in them, transportation, all of those things, to figure out what social service best foot forward we should be putting out there, and then to manage that for us. So I just need a vote by the committee to allow me to do that, and then we'll start preparing what that is, and then with the state's attorney's office and send that out, and then get some people back in here.
Mr. Payton moves to approve an RFQ. Is there a second? Mr. Fairfield? I will recognize Dr. Polk this time. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Modification of the agreement with Alfred Ronan LTD.
So I don't know how many people, I've told a few people, but right at the end of the legislative session, our lobbyist, Al Ronan, had a pretty substantial stroke, and he's been recuperating. His firm has still been acting in our behalf, as led by his daughter, and you have her firm's information in there. They worked with Al, obviously, and their whole team are still working on our legislative agenda. However much of it we can still get across with the climate in Springfield. aside, we're still trying and still knocking on all those doors. But it's become evident to Marin, Al's daughter, and the owner of Marin Ronan Limited, that there's going to have to be a modification that allows us to pay her instead of Al Ronan Limited, Alfred Ronan Limited. It's still the same people doing the work, but if he's the principal in the one company, so the modification would be allow me to work with the state's attorney to add Marin Ronan Limited onto the agreement, because we're still contracted for the next legislative session. So it's just allowing us to still work with the same people, but billing the legal entity that needs to be billed, if that makes sense. So, and if there's any questions beyond that, I mean, he's got a long road to recuperate, and so.
Mr. Seawright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hate to hear that about Mr. Ronan. Would we dissolve our agreement with Al's part of it and then just put her in, or is the agreement's going to go together, so it's still going to cost us the same?
Cost us the same. It's just allowing her company to be one of the people that we're contracted with, because he may come back. It's unknown at this point on his recuperation. You know, I'd say, you know, all Al needs is a telephone.
Yeah,
and he's dangerous. You know, so it's and he knows how to get it done. So, and believe me, I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to do that, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. This allows us to keep working in the eventuality that he either returns or it ends up being Marin's company that moves forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this modification? Mr. Fairfield and Ms. Weber for a second. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Weber.
I think I wonder what the effective date is.
Well, it would be after the full board approves it.
I see.
So it would be just allowing the modification to be inserted at that point. So I just wanted you to know it wasn't just a fly-by-night organization that's picking it up. This is actually the people that have been working for us, just in a different format.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Aye. Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Mr. Payton? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We have nothing from the auditor. Surprise. Is there any old business come before the committee?
I have something, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I received a letter from Mr. Kinzinger, effective the 27th. He has announced his resignation from the county board. He is pursuing business interests outside of the county board, so I'm sorry he couldn't stay here. Obviously, he's pursuing business interests at the moment, but I just wanted, we won't have the opportunity again to thank him in the room because effective the 27th, he's no longer a member of the board. So we'll vote on that at the next county board meeting per all of the, to accept the vacancy and then to announce. So I'm going to be sending all of our letters, or someone's going to be sending all of our letters today out to the political parties as required. So I just wanted to mention that. So we're looking for somebody in that Old Oak, Bourbonnais area back in there, those neighborhoods. Must be from the same political party that was elected to that seat.
Any other old business? Any new business? Seeing none?
I'd like to ask the question.
Dr. Polk, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask the question. Have we decided when we will be able, or how much we will be able to give Pembroke for the sewage? Has there been bids on the sewage situation?
You want to speak to that, Mr. Payton?
Yeah.
Mr. Payton?
We have received one bid as of today. I expect the other one probably about the end of the week, and then we'll be able to move on it.
Okay, would Pembroke be able to, is it the township, would they be able to get any of the funds that we're talking about here to kind of assist with that?
Well, we have already requested it.
But we don't know how.
We don't know what the bid's gonna be, so the last bid.
Oh, okay.
If I could, Ms. Polk,
I just wanted,
I had it on a handwritten note on our list to kind of maybe get a not to exceed number of $75,000 because that's about where it's coming in, but we haven't got the second bid. So we could do that, and then the second bid actually contains everything that needs to be done. So I didn't bring it up. So if the committee actually wants to vote on a next not to exceed number, it fits into 5.2 of the ARPA under wastewater. We could approve it, but I don't know if that does us justice in the process.
I personally would like to wait for the second bid.
oh, I just wanted to know. Because
Mr. Hess?
it's not healthy. It's not healthy to have the sewage running down the street.
Thank you, Chair. Didn't we already approve the emergency spending on that?
Yeah, but we didn't put a number behind it.
We didn't put the number, but we've already approved it, so we should be able to bring that number straight to the county board.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, but the next county board meeting is a couple weeks away.
But if the bid comes in at the end of the week, then you're gonna have your numbers.
Right. Should have numbers. So that's the only reason I thought a not to exceed, but I don't know what's really wrong with everything yet. Because it's not just the pumps. It's the rails and the boards and everything's just fried.
Panels.
It panels, everything, yeah. So I don't think it's gonna be 75 is kind of where I'm at, but.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just ask.
Oh, I'm glad you did.
Thank you. Any new business come before the board? Hearing none, Mr. Hess? Is there a second?
Polk.
Dr. Polk? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion